in darkness retreats when I've gotten home, and then woken up and felt like it was a spiritual.
After game one.
Yeah, we had to. Yeah, I blended into the backdrop right now. You're right. They're down 2-0. It's fine. They'll find a way to come back in this one. But they do come home with this. And look, right now there are no good vibes for the Blues. Yes, they've been 1-goal games with the exception of that empty net in game number 1. Yes, it feels like the Blues were one shot away, but at even strength, which is the most important part when it comes to hockey. And look, the officials have taken control of some of these games, but that's not a reason that the Blues have lost. They've got no even strength offense. BK had the numbers. We were going through them. 39-27 even strength shots in favor of the Winnipeg Jets. 39-26 scoring chances in favor of the Winnipeg Jets. 20-7 high danger chances in favor of the Winnipeg Jets. And it's a 5-1 goal differential. The one goal that the Blues scored at even strength was that rebound that bounced off of Luke Schenn right onto the stick of Oscar Sundqvist. BK, this team has had the inability to create any offensive zone time. They've had the inability to get to the front of the net at even strength. And what's the difference? It's the net front presence, and it's the even strength victories that Winnipeg's coming away with.
I mentioned this after game number 1, and I still feel this way after last night. I just don't think that the Blues have the offense at 5-on-5 to win this series. I don't take any pleasure in saying that, but watching this series the way that it's played out, I know that it's really the third period that's determining this, but it feels, you can feel the momentum swinging heavily in Winnipeg's favor. The first period again last night, I thought the Blues came out and played a really nice first period overall. And they set themselves up. They set themselves up to have an opportunity to be interesting in that game. And then they just, all of the momentum disappears. It's just gone. And they have no ability to create any kind of offensive zone time. They look like they're back on their heels for the rest of the game. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele completely take over. And what's strange is, like, the Blues are this team that comes out, and they're supposed to be the deeper team, right? Because they've got 2 guys in their top 4 goal scorers this year on Winnipeg that are out for the series. The Blues have 1 guy that's been out so far for the series, and we expect that to continue to be the case with Dylan Holloway. The Blues' depth of scoring isn't showing up, man. It's just not there. I thought Jimmy Stuggerud played a really good game last night, but you just don't look like you're ready for this kind of a matchup. And that's okay. This season was about getting here. This was the destination for the Blues. Whereas Winnipeg, they have their sights set on getting to June. They have their sights set on hopefully hoisting that cup above their heads. And those are very different aspirations for teams that are in very different places in their life cycle. So to me, this series is not like a smack back down to reality or anything like that. It is just a reminder of, hey, there are still some steps for the Blues to take on this path that they're trying to walk right now, and it's going to take some time for them to get to where Winnipeg is right now.
You know, I always go back to the conversation we had with David Backes, and it feels a lot like that 2008-2009 season when the Blues got swept by the Vancouver Canucks. Now, if you go back and look at that first round matchup in April, they lost 2-1, 3-0, 3-2, 3-2. And again, that was a team that wasn't expected to be in the playoffs. They made a second half run. They got in. They had a lot of young players, and Backes and Perron and Oshie, and they got swept. But remember, David Backes told us, he's like, I got to take you back to the 2008-2009 season when we lost in 4 games. And all of us understood, hey, we had to empty the gas tank to get to the postseason. And then when we got to the postseason, we got our butts kicked. And we said, there's got to be another level for this team to take. Now, what you hope doesn't happen is the following 2 years out of that 08-09 season when they missed the playoffs until they got back. But I do think there's a little bit of understanding the postseason. They did empty the gas tank to get to the playoffs. They get into the playoffs. Winnipeg is, you're right, BK, they have their sights set on a bigger picture right now, and the Blues are still trying to figure out playoff hockey. The problem for where they're at, and I think a lot of this goes to show you why Jim Montgomery went 11-7 last night. Some of this is injuries to their guys that are playing and not playing, and some of this is they just don't have line combinations. They don't trust Matthew Joseph in the game. Hence, in game 1, they sat him for about 6 shifts in the third period, and they went the option of let's just double shift guys on that third line. And guys, the only line that had success last night against the Winnipeg Jets was Snuggerud, Thomas, and Pavel Buchnevich. Everything else was either 50% Corsi rating or below 50% Corsi rating. They didn't have a third line, which means you don't have Bolduc. After Kyrou got smashed by Logan Stanley, he was kind of displaced from the game, and the WTF line just hasn't had the same impact that they were having. So when you have one line, the other team matches up and says, cool, let's shut down this line, and then the other lines are going to have to figure out what to do at even strength, and the Blues haven't been able to do that.
I know people questioned the whole 11-7 decision last night. I kind of liked it.
Oh, I understood it, and I liked it as well.
And the reason why is twofold. One, you weren't trusting Matthew Joseph anyway, so why force a square peg into a round hole? It's not working. There's no reason to continue to do it. Tyler Tucker can potentially give you some quality minutes, and he can help you on the penalty kill a little bit.
And you're not going to put Texier in either, BK. Sorry to interrupt, but you don't go Texier. I saw a lot of people saying, like, well, why not play Texier? He's played 3 games since the Four Nations break. You can't put him into a playoff atmosphere and say, cool, just go out there and play playoff hockey for us. You haven't even played playoff hockey down the stretch out of the Four Nations break for us.
Did I accidentally say that Jimmy Snuggerud didn't look like he's ready? I did not mean to say that if I did. I thought Jimmy Snuggerud was great last night.
You said it
If
yesterday,
that's what I said.
when I brought up the fact that they should put him on the top line.
I did not like the decision to do so. He looked great. He proved me completely wrong. He was I thought he was your best player on the ice yesterday.
Yeah, he and Binnington.
And I'm not just saying that because he scored the goal. I thought he was great. I thought Jordan Kyrou did not have a good game last night, and you mentioned that, Alex. I thought Robert Thomas looks like he's not at 100%. Colton Parayko looks like he's far from 100% right now. The number of times where he's screaming back towards the other end to try to retrieve a puck, he looks like he's agonizing.
He played 19 minutes last night. That's not Colton Parayko. Parayko plays 23 plus a night.
And I know they had the 7 defensemen. That changes some things a little bit. I wonder if some of that is because they saw Parayko in game number 1 and were like, we should probably lighten the load a little bit on him. So I liked the decision to go to 11-7 last night. I don't think that was a problem for them. It allowed them to get their best players on the ice more often. That 12th forward that they had in Matthew Joseph, he wasn't going to be a part of that discussion anyways once you got to the third period. So I don't think that's what lost you the game. I think sometimes this is a harsh reality that is difficult to face as fans. Sometimes the other team is better than you. And right now the Winnipeg Jets are better than the St. Louis Blues. It's a hard thing to say. It's certainly a hard thing to stomach, but they earned the President's Trophy this year. They are without a couple of dudes on their team, and they're still better than you. And that's hard to overcome. In this series, Jordan Binnington has been great. You have seen some positive signs from some of the young guys. There are reasons to be optimistic, highly optimistic about what the future is. And they took us on one unbelievable ride this year. And I think they're going to get at least one more game. When they come back home, I think they will win a game at least. But I think Winnipeg's the better team. They've had the better season, and I expect them to ultimately wrap up this series.
Yeah, I mean, Game 1 and Game 2 were very different for me because I thought Game 1, they were right there. They made one mistake, and that's what lost them the game. Game 2, I thought they were the better even-strength team in the first period, but it felt like they threw everything out there in the first, and then their gas tank was on E by the time they got to the third period. And it's just, to me, it comes down to even strength. To me, you're not going to win this series unless you get better at even strength. And it's not even that I feel like the Winnipeg Jets are better than you. It's one line is better than your entire team. Because I actually think the Blues have been toe-to-toe with the second, third, and fourth line of Winnipeg. It's come down to the Blues' inability to stop Scheifele and Kyle Connor and Alex Iafallo.
But that's part of it, right? Like the Blues had one line that was doing the majority of their damage during this winning streak as well. It was that Holloway, Shin, and Kyrou.
And that's where I really feel like the injuries have taken a toll. I think if they had Robert Thomas, and Joe even said it last night. Jeremy Rutherford, who joined us on postgame from Winnipeg, said it too. He's limping around after games. He's not the same guy. And why is Mark Scheifele having the success he's having? It's because you don't have the same Robert Thomas. You don't have the same Colton Parayko. I truly believe if those guys were as close to 100% as you can have them, and Dylan Holloway is, I think this is a different series. And
I think that we also have to say that about Winnipeg. They're also without 2 of their top 4 scorers. So I think it's unfair to play the injury game just for the Blues.
I'm not playing the injury game just for the Blues. I think if both teams are at full strength, the Blues could play with this team. I think they can.
I think it would look like this. I think if both teams were at full strength, you would see a pretty similar series to this because they're getting 2 guys back at the top of their forward group. The Blues are getting 1. I understand there's also the not injury but hurt ability for both Parayko and Thomas as well. I think it would be close, but I think this looks relatively close right now, and Winnipeg is just slightly better.
Yeah, I'm just not making an excuse saying that the Blues are hurt and that's why they're losing this series. Winnipeg's a good team, but I do think when you take the impact of the 3 players that are arguably your 3 MVPs, because Ehlers and Velarde weren't the MVPs of that team. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele were. Now, they were a part of that line with Velarde, but I truly think that the impact of injuries has taken a toll on this Blues team, and that's the learning experience of postseason action. You've lost Bolduc. You've lost Jake Neighbors in this series. Both just have not been the same present individuals, and that's the impact of not having the ability to roll four lines. And you can't roll four lines because Dylan Holloway's out of this one, and you don't have that second go-to line that gives you that push.
He's Alex Esteban on BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. You guys can get involved in the show. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You can check us out on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. Coming up in the 12 o'clock hour, we'll talk to Jeremy Rutherford. He's going to join us in studio. He just landed. This guy never stops. He's going to head this way to the studio. He'll join us coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. John Buccigross is going to join us in the 12 o'clock hour as well. Again, if you guys want to get involved in the show, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. Coming up next, the Blues are getting some important evaluations on those young players right now. We mentioned Jimmy Snuggerud. Great game last night. Alex also brought up Neighbors and Bolduc. What do we make of the way that they've all performed so far? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Thomas with a head of steam. Gets held along the wall, then taken down by Morrissey. Clearing attempt. The puck gets deflected back into the corner. And with Buccigross now, 10 seconds to go to Fowler. Wiring a shot with Snuggerud. And back now to Buccigross. Buccigross through. Snuggerud. Score! Jimmy Snuggerud. Power play goal. Ties the game 1-1. 0.8 seconds to go. Period number 1.
Shavar!
Kirby's got a new Viking language.
Game last night, 2-1 loss on the road at Winnipeg.
I kind of liked it.
2-0 series deficit thus far.
I think he was going with Jimmy or Snuggerud shoots and scores, and then shoots and scores were put together, and it's scores.
I love it. It's
Been
fantastic.
there.
Jimmy
I want it on a
Snuggerud,
t-shirt.
I thought overall had a really good game last night. He was impressive to me. Now, in game one, I didn't feel his presence, and that's okay. Sometimes you have that with a goal scorer, right? They kind of float throughout the game, and you just don't feel them throughout. Last night was different. Last night, you could feel his presence throughout. He was really the only guy that I felt that way about in a positive way for the most part for the Blues. Alex, this is giving the Blues an opportunity to look at some of these young guys and say, all right, where are we at with them right now? Because playoff hockey is different. You certainly have seen that in this series. It is unbelievably physical. I mean, they were talking about that on the ESPN broadcast. We'll talk about it with John Buccigross coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. It just has a different feel. It has a different vibe. You can see they're finishing their checks. They are going through bodies instead of up into the body. And some guys thrive in those environments. Others wilt a bit in those environments. How have you felt about the way that the Blues young players have responded to where we're at right now in the postseason, Alex?
I think in terms of Snuggerud, Neighbors, and Bolduc, I think we've lost Bolduc a little bit in this series. I think he's still trying to figure out how to handle this. We saw the penalty that he took with Iafallo getting under his skin. The offense really just hasn't been there. Neighbors, this is prime Jake Neighbors real estate. It's just finding that offense and the ability to get in front of the net. I think Jimmy Snuggerud has looked like he fits in like a glove for playoff hockey. I mean, he's played on two separate lines in two different games. The first one, that line really did not have anything going, but that seems to be that second line right now with Shen and Kyrou. It's why I wanted to see him get the opportunity with Robert Thomas, because Snuggerud's a shooter. You've got to get somebody who can get him the puck. And Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich, man, they're distributors. They find ways to get you the pucks. They cycle it below the goal line. And that first period specifically, man, Snuggerud was just finding open space, and he was taking shots, and he was getting on Hellebuck. But it's not just the offense with him. We knew the offense was there. You knew the shot was elite that we saw on the power play. It's the defensive side of the game for him. He picked two pucks off via pass from the Mark Scheifele line in that first period in the neutral zone and was able to push it back into the offensive zone. I think the biggest thing for Snuggerud is he's got to put on muscle. He's got to put on weight, because at the NHL level, they can push you off the pucks very easy. It's the same conversation we had with Bolduc last season at the end of the year, where he told us, it's like, I understand the NHL level a little bit more. I got to go put some muscle on. And he did so, and he's been a better player this season. I think all three are learning different variables of what takes place in the playoffs versus the regular season, why the playoffs were so important for this group. But for me, Jimmy Snuggerud, there's a reason he's playing 17, 18 minutes a night. It's because Jim Montgomery thinks this guy can play at the NHL level, specifically when the brights are the lightest at the NHL playoffs postseason action. And I think he's fit in perfectly on that top line with Thomas and Booch.
Yeah, I think Snuggerud looks like he's going to be a star in this league based on the way he's playing in the postseason. Look, I agree. Disappeared in game one. Even Kyrou has games like that, even dating back prior to this year, because Kyrou was invisible after getting hit last night.
Every goal scorer does.
Exactly. So Snuggerud looks the part, and I think the part that's impressive with him is whether you notice him or don't notice him, I think it's more of don't notice him, but you don't see a defensive liability right now. Like, that was my biggest concern when they put him on that top line last night was, okay, well, now you've got to match up against that Connor line. Are they going to take advantage with this rookie, this 20-year-old kid that's going to be on the top line, taking on some of the most defensive responsibilities with Buchnevich and Thomas? And that didn't really happen last night. So he looks like he's really going to fit, like you said, he's going to fit like a glove on a hand for the St. Louis Blues. Neighbors and Bolduc, you can tell, kind of just going through the flow of kind of learning across the postseason, because both of them took dumb penalties in game one, and both really haven't been noticeable so far in this series. That isn't something that I think is going to be something that sustains as they go throughout their careers in the playoffs. I think it's them learning here in their first year in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
That's how I feel. I don't think there's a whole lot to take away in terms of like, oh, these guys are not a part of your core. You got to watch out. These guys can't play. No, I I think they're figuring out what the playoffs look like and how their games can translate to the playoffs, right? Everybody's a little different. I was listening to the broadcast yesterday, Alex, and Joey mentioned he talked with Jake Neighbors yesterday, or 2 days ago, I guess it would have been at that point in time. And he was like, man, how are you feeling, Jake? And Jake told him, I'm a little sore. And Joey was like, no, tell me the truth. How are you feeling? He said, it's the worst my body has ever felt. And that was coming off of game 1 of a playoff series in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which, I mean, you hope will eventually go multiple months for a team. So I don't say that to like take a shot at Jake Neighbors at all, but I think he felt the physicality. It wears on you, dude. It's why they say this is the hardest championship to win. Because physically, mentally, emotionally, you are spent after a game, much less multiple series that you have to win. So it's good for these guys. It's why I thought it was so important for the team to get into the playoffs this year, for them to feel this, to get it now out of your system. And yeah, this isn't the year that the Blues were ever expecting to go on any kind of a run in the playoffs. But it is the year where you can find out for these guys, what does it take to go on that run? How far do you have to dig for you to be able to be the team that makes it into the Stanley Cup final? It's freaking hard, and it takes a lot out of you. So I think that Jake Neighbors is going to learn a ton from this experience. I think the same thing is true from Bolduc. Think about the guy that we saw last year versus the guy that we saw towards the end of this season. Totally different players. Jake Neighbors was quick to be able to translate his game to the regular season, and part of that, I think, is because he plays more physical in the regular season than most guys do. Now you have to take that up a notch in the playoffs where everybody is matching that physicality. How do you win when everybody else is now playing your game? I think that's the big question for Jake Neighbors. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like for him, but he's got to find that, and I think he will.
And there's a skill set, too, of finding ways to get underneath the other team's skin without taking penalties. You know, like that's the one thing that Jake Neighbors, I think, has thrived on in his first couple of years in the NHL. He's a guy that can be a pest to the other team. He finishes his checks. He's with the extracurriculars, but you also have to find a way to not go too far to cross that line because they'll call penalties. And look, all three play a different style of hockey, and that's where you have to see that the regular season is different than the postseason. And this also comes to the fatigue factor. When you put everything out there in the final 2 months of the season to get to the playoffs, there is another level that you have to get to. And sometimes as a guy who's only played a couple of seasons in the NHL, or if you're Bolduc, you've played 1.5 seasons in the NHL, you hit a wall, and it's cool. How do you push through that wall? I mean, the Winnipeg Jets have been doing this since 2016.
Exactly.
The Winnipeg Jets understand what that wall. They hit the wall in 2019. Murat Ates told us that. 2019, when the Blues beat them in the first round, they were a team that was banged up, and they went into that series thinking, man, how are we going to overcome this? And they fought their butts off, but they lost in 6 games. At some point, you're going to hit a wall, and you say, how do we push through that wall? That's the learning experience that you take from this season, and you go into next season with it.
This is also why the Blues stuck with Jordan Binnington. This series, this moment, this opportunity for everybody, this is why I remember over the last couple of years, Alex, we had countless conversations, whether it was at the deadline, I think it was 2 years ago now, or in the offseason. What do the Blues do? Do you keep Jordan Binnington? He is not the same player that he once was. Like, is it time to go ahead and cash in on this asset if they're not planning to win? What's the point of having Jordan Binnington taking up $6.5 million on your cap? They were all, I think, legitimate and fair questions among the fan base. But the answer was this. This is why. Because you want the opportunity to get back here, and Binnington was a big reason why they made it to the playoffs, much less are having an opportunity to potentially have any success once you get here. And, dude, he's keeping them in these games right now. I mean, you look at the series at 5-on-5, one team has been flat out better than Winnipeg. You mentioned the numbers in the first segment. They have outchanced you high danger-wise 20-7 at 5-on-5 so far in this series. Through 2 games, 20-7, and last night it was like 13-2 in favor of Winnipeg. The reason that these games are as close as they are, a big part of it is because Jordan Binnington has been standing on his head.
Yeah.
He is giving you a chance right now to remain in these games. Unfortunately, Winnipeg has made a couple more plays than you have, and that's why they're up 2-0, but Jordan Binnington is not the reason why.
No, and this is why you haven't traded him, and you shouldn't trade Jordan Binnington, because when you're a team that's learning what playoffs are like, you've got to have a goaltender who can cover up some of the warts for you, because otherwise you get dejected real quick, and you do go into what the 2008-2009 season one, where it's like, okay, a couple of years you're still in that growing pains process. I mean, there's been one goal that I think you could look at and you'd be like, oh, man, Binnington, you probably should have had it. But even that one, that Iafallo goal in game one that tied it up, man, that's a hard goal to have to stop. Everything's been deflections, odd bounces, and elite goal scorers like Kyle Connor has.
That's so good.
I mean, look around the NHL, guys. I don't know if people paid attention last night, but goaltending matters. The Stars the Avalanche were up 3-1 on the Dallas Stars, and they coughed up a lead and lost in overtime. The LA Kings were up 4-1 on the Oilers, and they had to go to overtime because the Oilers scored 4 goals in the third period. Like, goaltending, if you don't get the stop specifically in the playoffs, you're as good as cooked. And what Jordan Binnington does is he prolongs those series for you. He gives you the opportunity to figure out where your warts are so that you can find their game. You saw that in the Minnesota Wild series a few years ago. Ville Husso struggled early on. They put Binnington in, and Binnington pulled them back into that fight, and the Blues won that series.
The biggest thing, I just trust him. And I think the guys on the team trust him. And there's such a different feeling. When we went into that series with Husso, I had no idea how he was going to respond. No idea how he was going to respond.
They didn't either.
And when you go into a series with Binner, I feel really good that he's going to respond to the moment. Some guys thrive with that kind of pressure, and others go down a level, or 6 levels in the case of Husso.
Don't throw him that far down.
I mean, the dude is far down.
It was defense. It was defense.
The dude is that far down. He's in the American Hockey League.
The advanced analytics of the defense shouldn't have been as good as it was, and it finally happened.
It's funny how that bad defense just automatically was great again with Binnington in that.
That save that he made last night on the breakaway, where he ended up like 6 feet going in the other direction.
It was actually better than the Kyle Connor one-time save that he had in game number 1, which is wild.
Some of the saves that he's made already in this series are absolutely ridiculous. The leg kick save that he made as well. And just he's keeping you in this.
When you have young guys that turn the puck over in the neutral zone or don't make the right play, and the goalie lets up a soft goal, man, those young players are like, cool, I can't do that anymore. Now I have to be perfect, and then you start getting in your own head. But with Binnington, when you're down by a goal, you could start pushing it offensively a little bit. I guarantee you Jim Montgomery was telling the defenseman, jump up into the rush. Start getting offensively focused, because Binnington will make the save for you. Try and create some offense.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Somebody from the 314 said, but guys, will Binnington be around when the Blues are competitive? Yes, they're competitive right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not a cup contender right now, but they're competitive right now. And next year, you would hope, is the start of their winning window. I don't know how much winning they'll do next year in the postseason, but it should be the start of us having expectations again for the Blues.
And it's not like he's 37 years old. He's 31 years old. Marc-Andre Fleury has played until he's, what, 40?
Well, he probably should have called it 3 years ago.
Probably, but you know what? He's at least kept his head above water.
I think you got another 3 years of Binner.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have 3 elite years left, but you've got 3 pretty damn good years left.
Yeah, I think you got about 3 to 4. Yeah. And then, in that sense, you've got a Joel Hofer who might be ready to take over. You've got goaltending depth. This is not a problem. Yes, you're going to be
down the minor leagues.
You're expected to be a playoff team next year because you made the playoffs this year, and that's why you have Jordan Binnington.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK in 15 minutes, we'll get into questions and answers. JR was able to get over here quick, so he's going to join us in studio next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londa Chevrolet and Johnny Londa Autoplex. Last night, Blues fell to the Winnipeg Jets 2-1 as Winnipeg takes a 2-0 lead in the best-of-7 series. Game 3 will be on Thursday night, and we'll have coverage for you starting at 7:30 with Alex Ferrario with pregame coverage, then 8:30 for Puck Drop with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale. And last night, the Cardinals lost to the Atlanta Braves as the bullpen blows up once again. They lose 7-6. They'll be back in action tonight. 6:15 will be first pitch. Andre Palante will be getting the start for the Cardinals. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londa Chevrolet and Johnny Londa Autoplex. See them at Londa.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, happy to be joined in studio today by the one and only Jeremy Rutherford. He got off his plane, immediately sprinted to the car, got here for us in studio, and we appreciate him doing it as always. Jer, of course, writes over at The Athletic. You can read his recap of last night's loss for the Blues over there. You can always follow him on Twitter as well, at JP Rutherford. Jer, appreciate the time, man. How you doing?
Anytime. T-Bone, have some Mexican music there. Let's, que pasa, mis amigos?
Worked on your Spanish over in Winnipeg.
Didn't it feel good, right?
Yeah.
Feel a little...
I'm ready for a margarita.
That sounds about right. That's what happens when you're in Winnipeg all night.
Behind the curtain, this was originally a baseball segment, so that's why we had a little bit of that pop music there.
JR, the vibes are not quite as good for the Blues as they were in that introductory song that we had coming back there.
No bueno.
How would you categorize what we saw from them in the first two games of this series?
Yeah, I think if you're a Blues fan, you have to be happy with the effort / performance. Now, there were some mistakes that cost them both games, but I think going into this series, you knew that the Blues had to be pretty close to perfect against this team. And I'm sure we'll get into it. I know you guys have touched on it, but I think these injuries, these guys that are even in the lineup, are significant. I don't think Robert Thomas is 100%. He didn't look good in the locker room last night. Colton Parayko, same thing. And of course you miss Dylan Holloway. So I'd be interested to see if you had those three guys 100% in the lineup, what this series could look like. But then, as you guys said, you have a couple of Jets that are out of the lineup too.
That's the part, though, for me. And this is a while ago. I go back to December when they beat Winnipeg in Winnipeg 4-1, and that was a healthy lineup for the Winnipeg Jets. And the Blues actually were without Pavel Buchnevich in that game. It just feels like you're one bad play from being at least still in a tie with this Winnipeg Jets team. And I know that sounds like an excuse. I mean, frankly, even strength, you just have not had a lot of success. And if you're Jim Montgomery, you kind of have to shrug your shoulders and say, there's not much else I can do. There's no more line juggling that I can try and accomplish to beat this Winnipeg Jets team.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think their hands are kind of tied at this point with what their lineup is. I think that they are just one play away, as Jim Montgomery has said a couple times, Alex said, in both of these games. The only thing is they're making plays defensively that are helping Winnipeg make those plays. Now, yeah, these are high-end plays that Winnipeg's converting and scoring these goals, setting up Kyle Connor, but it's because the Blues didn't extinguish the play earlier on, and I think that's what Jim Montgomery said post-game last night. Listen, I know this is the cop-out, but Alex, we've been talking about this on Last Minute Blues podcast all year, is I try to step back from the situation and understand that in 2 years, what are we going to be talking about? It's going to be, man, that Winnipeg series really prepared me. I went into the offseason and got ready based on what I learned in that. And so, yeah, it's disappointing to fall down 2-0, and who knows what will happen the rest of the series if, this is it. But I think you can look back and say, we got some good experience. These young guys really took a step. I got a piece on Jimmy Snuggerud. I spoke to his dad yesterday. His dad, he told me yesterday, he goes, I didn't know if he was ready. I'm like, hey, buddy, he's ready.
He's good.
Yeah, so there's some players on here that I think are really going to learn from this. And at the same time, I think Blues fans can feel good that even if they lose this series 4-1, 4-2, 4-0, that what did this do to put this Blues team in the playoffs down the stretch and play some of these games?
This series is going to be remembered for whatever comes next.
Yep.
Like, if this ends up preparing them, and next year we're talking about them getting to the second round, maybe the Western Conference Finals, whatever it is, we'll look at this as, oh, that was what propelled them, right? They had that big winning streak, which allowed them the opportunity to find out where they are compared to a legit contender in the Western Conference. If they have the rubber band effect next year and they go back down to earth, it'll be, oh man, they had that 12-game winning streak. It was great. And then you had that reality hit you in the face when you got into the first round of the playoffs. And we all should have known at that point, oh, we're not as good as we thought we were. So it'll probably be remembered based on whatever it is that comes next. I did want to ask you, because we got this on the YouTube chat. Somebody mentioned it. Was it just me, or did the Blues seem really slow going after loose pucks and the Jets looked really fast comparatively speaking? I noticed that in the third period as well. It's harder to be able to gauge that stuff on TV than it is when you're in person. Is that the injuries? Is it them running out of gas when they're late into games? Like, what do you attribute that to?
I think it's a combination. I think, as I wrote this morning, they've been so good in the third periods. I don't think we can look at it as conditioning or, anything like that. I think it's, they went 11-7, and I think we can see the reasons why they did it. But, maybe at the end of the game, your forwards aren't what they would be if you go in 12 forwards. I think the injuries, you look at the play where Connor scores. Robert Thomas is kind of caught in between. He goes down low. He comes back out. Robert Thomas is banged up. He can't be the quick Robert Thomas that he is if he's banged up. Jordan Kyrou. Listen, if I got hit by Stanley like that, I'd still be at Winnipeg National Hospital. So this is...
He got rocked.
And didn't miss a shot. I think he missed one shift.
Yeah,
and then
I'm sitting in the
there.
press box. I heard it. Didn't need microphones, anything. You heard the pads. So that's no excuse. All I'm saying is that I think there's situations where this team is going up against a good, fast team. The Blues are missing some players. They are kind of chasing that goal in the third period there. So there's reasons, I think, where they don't look as good as the Jets because they fell behind.
So, Jerry, you're talking about what the players may learn from the series depending on at the end of it. What do you think the front office is going to learn? Because for me, I told these guys, I kind of feel like you watch this and say the Blues might need to get a little bit bigger. I don't know if that's the forward position or the defenseman, but it feels like you're getting pushed around a little bit too much.
Yeah, and I think perhaps there's a guy or two they add in the next year or two that helps solve that issue. But I think they like their lineup. The thing that's always hard to evaluate questions like this is who's going to be here in a couple of years? Are they going to re-engage with Braden Shen in the offseason and move him? And there's, you lose one of your physical players there. You think that Jake Neighbors will be here. I know that people called about him up until the trade deadline. So, you don't want to make that deal if you're a Blues fan, I'm sure, and Doug Armstrong didn't. But you just don't know who's going to be here. So, in terms of the physicality, yeah, I think they could be a little more physical because we see once you get to the playoffs, you're for sure going to need this. But I think that's just going to be an evolution of the roster as they continue to move forward.
Holloway also fixes some of that.
Yep.
He's got the speed, which changes the question that I just asked about, and he's got some of the physicality that changes some of what Alex is talking about there.
Definitely.
How much... I'll tell you what I've told the audience in our first segment. I think the Jets are just better. If they're both at full strength, I think the Jets are the better team. When the Jets are without two of their forwards, you're without one, and you've got a couple of guys that are hurt, not injured, I think the Jets are the better team. I think this is just a series where you went up against the better team and you're losing. But in your mind, how much different does the series look if Dylan Holloway is playing at close to 100% right now?
Yeah, I think they're the better team, the Jets are. I think you could still be down 2-0, even if there's a healthy Holloway in the lineup. As I mentioned earlier, if Parayko and Thomas are healthy and Holloway's in your lineup, I think there's a pretty good chance that you got to split. I really do. So Holloway, I think, makes a significant difference for reasons you guys mentioned. Just with the lines, they've been searching for this chemistry. You talk to, Coach Montgomery after the practice yesterday. Well, we're going to move Snuggerud. We think this will give us a little more offense because they had just 17 shots in the first game, and then also we think this will position us better defensively. You can't get to the playoffs and be looking for things, and that's what he's forced to do because of that Holloway injury.
Well, and you also have. You're trying to figure out what to do with Bolduc. I mean, one of the pieces that has helped you in the second half of the season after the Four Nations was having that secondary scoring of Kyrou and Holloway and Bolduc. And I know he gave you reasons why not to move Zach Bolduc up, but, man, they've lost that third line.
They really have. And even when I asked that question about Bolduc and moving him up, you kind of prefaced the question by saying, I know you like what that third line brings. Well, actually, recently, that third line hasn't been itself. I mean, we did see a stretch, especially during that 12-game winning streak, where that third line was an asset, right? They were secondary scoring. Bolduc was really coming alive. How many goals did he have down the stretch? And you're not counting on anything now when that third line goes out. Not only that, but you decide to take one guy out and go 11-7. Right. So, I mean, when you talk about not having your top six healthy, a couple of those guys, and then you talk about not getting the production from that third line, I mean, it's pretty obvious why we're seeing what we're seeing.
we're talking to Jeremy Rutherford. He's joining us in studio here on 101 ESPN. Are there any changes that can be made? They've done 11-7. They switched up the line combinations. Montgomery's fingerprints are all over the series already, and we're only 2 games in. They're down 2-0. They come back home. The old saying is the series starts whenever the first home team ends up losing. Is there anything else Monty can do going into Game 3?
I don't think so. I think, let me set it up this way. They could play Game 3 and win 5-1, and it's heart. It's this Blues team that we saw down the stretch, and everybody, believes again. This is the team that we saw, where they've been. I think that's going to be difficult because of the guys that are banged up are so important. The only way to win this series is to stop the Kyle Connors and the Mark Scheifele's, and you haven't been able to do it so far. And look, Scott Arniel is trying to get Scheifele out against Thomas. I mean, if you're the Blues and you look at that situation, Thomas is your best defender. That's not a bad situation. But because of him and how hobbled he is, it does become a bad situation. So now, because they're going to be at home, they'll get the last matchup, and they can throw out a different line against that group. They can throw out multiple lines, whatever they want to do. So I think there's a situation where if the Blues execute and they play close to a perfect game, they can beat this team, but I think because of the injuries and who they're trying to contain, it's going to be difficult.
I don't know what matchup you look for with Mark Scheifele, because if you're Montgomery, you're probably thinking, well, we got to get Thomas away from Scheifele to see if we can generate a little bit more offense. Who are you putting up against that Scheifele line?
That's the thing. You can put the Chen line up there. You can mix and match with the fourth line if they're really humming. I mean, the fourth line has shown in the past, and Blues fourth lines have shown in the past that they can be capable of defending top lines. But, this is an elite top line. And so they can try it, but to go back to BK's question, what can Jim Montgomery do? I just don't think there's a lot other than execution at this point with the guys who you have that are 70%. That's all you can do at this point.
I guess you could try the Shin line against Scheifele, and you hope to play for the tie there, basically. And then that allows you to put the Thomas line, which hopefully gives you a little bit more offense. They're going up against more of a mismatch. That's just how you generate more offense. But now you've got Jordan Kyrou potentially being on the ice. And I think Kyrou has played much better defensively this year. That's a really tall task to go up against that Scheifele line. And now do you get the tie, or do you just make it easier for them to score, which has been the problem for you the whole series?
Yeah, and everything you just said has to go perfect.
Exactly.
Everything you just said, and then you're not guaranteed a win in that situation. You're just hoping to kind of stop them.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not an easy situation for them right now because of the lack of health, and because they're going up against a really damn good team. Sometimes we make sports more difficult than they need to be. The Jets are better than you right now. That doesn't mean they will be a year from now or even 6 months from now, but right now they're better. And the Blues are trying to get back into this series. They'll be back home on Thursday night. They'll have the home playoff game against the Jets. You'll be able to hear full coverage right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Final question that I've got for JR. We'll get you out of here on this. How much, because by the time we talk next week, I hope this isn't the case, but it's possible the series could be over. How much does this series, if at all, change the perspective of the season in your mind?
I think it changes it in terms of how it's gone so far.
For Blues fans, when you think back on the 2025 season, because I would say most people coming into this series were pretty happy with the way that the season went. You had the winning streak. You have Jim Montgomery in place. Young players have emerged. I think most of Blues fans had on a 1 to 10 scale of approval, it's like a 9 or a 10 for most fans. After this series, if it goes poorly the way that it has thus far, do you think that changes?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for fans, but Alex, we talk to fans all the time at the rink, and I feel like I have a pulse of what they feel. There will certainly be some that are disappointed if they get swept or if they just win one game in this series, and it'll put a little damper on the way things end. But I think by and large, right, Alex, the larger portion of fan base will look at this still as a team that fight and clawed to the end, got into the playoffs, got some guys some experience, and gave the front office an opportunity to say, okay, this guy can hack it, this guy can do it. Let's move forward with them, and also here's the holes that we have, and also not make excuses, but look at the situation and say, well, what could we have done if we had those guys healthy? So, yeah, if the fan vibe was a 9 out of 10 at the end of the regular season, I think it should still be an 8 or a 9, regardless of how this series goes.
Yeah, because it's all about big picture, and you've got the coach in place, you've got the young players in place, you saw what you needed to from the guys that are supposed to be carrying you. It's hard to be disappointed if you get swept in the series, and I brought up 08-09, JR, a little little bit ago, saying, like, I remember Backus talking about how you kind of get your teeth kicked in that series against Vancouver, but it set him up for success going into the next few seasons. This feels a little like that, but I don't feel like this team's going into it saying, like, yeah, but we might miss the playoffs for the next 2 years.
Yeah, there's just this whole... If they don't get into the playoffs, if they don't go on the run that they did, I think this offseason is the biggest what do we do in question. I think it's massive for the front office, even though they've made some great moves with, Broberg and Holloway and these guys, and put things in terms of the lineup, put things moving forward where you can see some pieces coming together. But if they end the season on 2-10 or miss the playoffs by 8 points, there are so many questions, and those questions have been erased.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. For what it's worth, to answer my own question, if it was an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 beforehand, I still feel the exact same way after this series. It does nothing to dissuade me from the positive vibes that they were able to build. All right, JR, we appreciate the time as always. We'll be reading your work over at The Athletic, following JR on Twitter as well at JP Rutherford. All the best, man. Thanks for hopping in with us today.
Anytime, boys.
Go get that margarita and go to sleep.
He's Jeremy Rutherford. Appreciate his time as always. We'll have John Buccigross coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. He was on the call for the Blues game last night over on ESPN, but coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line or on the YouTube chat at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. From Ryan Crawford, by the way, over in YouTube, the series is not over yet. Mark my words. Alex, how many games do you think the Blues win in this series? If you had to predict it today.
1. I think they get 1 win on this home ice.
That's where I'm at.
I'm not ruling out the possibility that they could win both home games, but man, it's going to be, I mean, you're going to have to throw everything you can at Winnipeg, which tells me then you go back to Winnipeg and it is going to be a massive uphill battle for this team. So I'll say that you can get 1 and maybe 2.
From Bishan About Sports, this is a question for the listeners and for you guys. Isn't it nice to have the playoffs back in St. Louis? Because we all know the baseball team ain't doing anything this year. I feel like that was a backhanded compliment.
Yeah. Right on both fronts.
Dude, last night was awesome.
Dude, the anticipation for the playoffs is the best part. Like, you want it to get here
I
so
can't
fast.
wait for Thursday.
Yeah. And like the fact that sorry,
Easy,
BK.
man.
Sorry,
Chill.
geez. The fact that like there's 2 days away and like you've already been beaten in both games and we're excited for Thursday. That's just the playoffs, man. Like, you can be bad and still get excited for the playoffs. So, yeah, it's very nice to have it back. Gives us something to get excited about.
I will say, this is the same energy I want people to have about the Cardinals. If they're not making the playoffs.
We're like 3 years away from that, man.
If they were to get to the playoffs, it can also be exciting. That's part of the fun.
And I'm not
getting there.
I'm going to be excited for the playoffs because it'll be nice to have postseason baseball back. Sure. But it's just not happening this year.
Yeah, there's nothing better than postseason baseball. It sucks it won't be in 2025.
There is something better than postseason baseball, postseason hockey.
That's fair. I do love the physicality that's been
It's
brought
hockey,
I will say
baseball,
it is a little bit,
football.
I don't know about you guys, and maybe I'm one of the very few that feel this way. It does really suck and kind of bring down some of the excitement when you look at your team and go, we're so hobbled going into this thing. It does kind of feel like, I mean, we just mentioned it, like, it's tough for us even to sell ourselves on they get 1 game, let alone 2, 3, or 4. Yeah. That's one thing that does really damper down, but it's still playoff hockey.
21 was the year where they went into the postseason and, like, Perron got hurt right beforehand, right?
No, Perron got hurt in the bubble.
Yeah.
Perron got hurt in 2020.
Was it
or 21 postseason?
Yeah, that was the 21 postseason.
Yeah, in the bubble when they played Vancouver.
No.
That was 20.
Yeah, that was 2020.
The bubble was 20 against Vancouver. I think he got hurt against Colorado.
Yeah.
Wasn't that going into the Colorado series?
Yeah.
Am I mistaken there?
My years are all jacked up. 2019-2020 season was the bubble. 2020-2021 was the shortened season.
Correct.
That was where he was unavailable versus Colorado, and then Falk got injured with the hit from Kadri, and then Krug didn't play in. Krug was the next year when he got hurt.
Krug was 22.
Yeah. So the 21-22 was when they didn't have Krug. But yes, you're right.
The thing with the Blues, man, is it's been so many injuries or COVID that have altered how we felt about their playoff runs.
That's why it's such a hard trophy to win and why it's so cool when your team wins it, because like to stay healthy and get the bounces, because that's the other thing, and I know it's going to sound like an excuse. Dude, Winnipeg is having all of the puck luck right now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Mark Scheifele's 2 goals, he even said it on postgame last night. He's like, the 2 goals that I scored, I didn't even mean to score. Like, that's where things are at right now, and it's postseason.
Nonsense.
Well, I mean, it's true. The first goal he scored, he was not trying to score that goal.
Deflected off Suter's stick.
Yeah, went off of Suter's stick.
Scheifele or Connor?
Scheifele.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Yeah,
for some reason
Scheifele.
I thought you said Connor. I was like, well, that's just not
a real goal.
Scheifele said the 2 goals that I have scored, I wasn't trying to score on either of them.
I apologize. I misheard you. That's on me.
Yeah, like that's where you're at right now. But I mean, it's puck luck. You got to stay healthy. But that's why I feel like one of the biggest learning things from this postseason, if they get swept or gentlemen swept, you're going to look at it and say, cool.
We just got to be lucky.
No, what we need to do is not have 2 months of playing playoff hockey to get to the playoffs. Let's be good in October, November, December, January, struggle in February, and then get back to our game in March and April so we're ready for the playoffs.
Here's the problem. If you do that, you might be the Stars, where you end up losing a couple of your players right down the stretch, and then you go into the postseason and you're limping in as well. It really is good fortune. And the Blues in that 2019 Cup run, they had guys that were hurt, don't get me wrong. A lot of guys were playing through stuff. But they didn't have guys that literally couldn't take the ice. Like Dylan Holloway right now cannot get out there for his team. Colton Parayko is clearly banged up to a point where he's out there, but that ain't the Colton Parayko that Alex was talking about as potentially being in the top 5 in the Norris Trophy consideration. Robert Thomas, he's out there, not the dude that we were talking about as Selke Trophy consideration this year. So that is a big part of it, man. It's just being lucky. And that's in individual games where the Thomas shot last night, where Hellebuck has no idea where the puck is and then puts his glove behind him and it just happens to catch it. It's not great goalie play.
Yeah.
It's good fortune, man. And meanwhile, you have one that goes off of Suter's stick in the first game. So, it's all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Individual games, season, health, it's a lot of it is luck.
Bobby Plager used to always say it. He's like, you got to make good with the hockey gods before you get to the postseason. It's the only way you're going to find a way to the cup. And he's right. Sometimes you need those bounces to go your way.
No doubt
And the
about it.
bounces were going their way in that 12-game win streak, specifically at the end of it when the Holloway injury took place and when they were without Parayko. And right now, I mean, again, I'm not using this as an excuse of why the Blues are losing. They're getting outplayed, but man, the bounces of the goals that are going in, Winnipeg's just got that luck right now.
Tim's toothless bottom boy texts in. This Jets team reminds me a lot of the 2019 Blues, to be honest. Does it do the same for you guys?
No. Dude, I know they're winning. Dude, Connor Hellebuck looks leaky. And if I'm the Winnipeg Jets and you get through this series, especially if it's an easy route, good luck in that next round against Colorado, Dallas. I don't think Winnipeg's getting past the second round.
They remind me a little bit of the Blues. I want to see them fully healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen, if it's possible, but if they can get fully healthy, I think they've got some of those vibes. They play differently, though. Their defense specifically is a lot different than what the Blues had in 2019, but they're really deep. If that's what the comparison is the depth of scoring, the fact that I really don't feel like they have very many liabilities on the ice. They always have an above-average player on the ice at any given time. I think that's where the similarities maybe come in a little bit.
I'll predict it right now. If they play Colorado in the series, because I think Colorado's going to win that series, I think Winnipeg loses in 5.
They might. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. That's coming up in about 15 minutes or so. John Buccigross is going to join us in the 12 o'clock hour as well. But coming up next, I guess we got to talk about the Cardinals. They had a bunch of positives from last night, and then they got to the 8th inning. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Didn't mean to. That is a fair ball right in front of the plate. What a cruel way to end this game. A check swing roller stays fair. Iglesias and the Braves survive game one, Brad. 7-6 your final.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that's what it sounded like at the end of the game last night on FanDuel Sports Midwest. Chip Carey on the call. Just a rough ending to that one. And it started in the 8th, bled into the 9th with the way that the Cardinals were able to come back. And then, a check swing that unfortunately makes contact. And the ball just stops. It just stops. It was as if gravity had stopped for a moment. It just, right there. All right, so it is what it is. They lose 7-6 on the road at Atlanta. They're now a paltry 1-10 in road games so far this year. I don't think that this is like a home road problem for them necessarily. It's hard for me to make the case given what the results have been thus far, but it is what it is. The Cardinals have lost 5 straight. They have lost 6 of their last 7, and the team appears to be heading in the wrong direction. Alex, the problem is it's not any one thing. There were a couple of games in there where the offense just didn't do much of anything. There have been a couple of games this year where the starting pitching has sucked. But lately, the starting pitching has been great, and it's random relievers that can't get the outs. Ryan Fernandez, bad to start the year, then got back on track, and then stinks again. Last night, it was Phil Maton. Dude, Maton had allowed 0 runs on the season going into last night's game. You couldn't have scripted that thing any better for the Cardinals at that point in the game. You're able to get Eric Fetty through 6. Now, would you have liked to see him back out there in the 7th? Maybe, but he got hit in the leg earlier in the game, and he said that it was really tight. He could barely walk after the game. I'm going to guess that probably played into their decision-making there. And then you're able to hand it over to Leahy, Maton, and hopefully Ryan Helsley. That's the script that you want going into the game. You couldn't have asked for anything better. Leahy does his job. They go to Maton in the 8th, and then he implodes. Can't throw a strike, and when he does, it gets hit a mile. And then Jojo Romero comes in, and his strikes get hit a mile as well. I don't think Ollie could have done anything last night. It's just the game of whack-a-mole, and this time it was Phil Maton that popped up.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, I don't look at this game and scream like, well, this is why you lost. Ollie didn't manage the game. Dude, your pitcher, who we put into the circle of trust, who is arguably your second-best pitcher in the bullpen right now, blew up. Just like we saw Ryan Helsley blow up in Boston. Just like we've seen Ryan Fernandez blow up multiple times. Whether it's the starting pitching, the relief pitching, or if it's hitting, this is where the Cardinals are at. You're not going to have 3 things align every single game. 2 things might, but guess what? You're going to have to try your damnedest to make sure that that third doesn't ruin the game for you.
What's frustrating is, and we're going to get all these texts from Stuart Big over on YouTube.
Stewie.
I think they just simply suck. I don't feel that way about this team. And maybe this is me just being overly optimistic. That's possible. But I don't think this is a bad club. I don't think they've actually played all that bad this year. They're just having individual things within the team, and maybe this is what a bad team is. I don't know. Whatever.
I was going to say, I don't think they suck. I think they're just a bad team that hasn't figured out how to win consistently yet.
I don't think they're a bad team. Again, I'll wear it. Maybe I'm just being overly optimistic here, being a soft media member here in St. Louis. I don't think this is a bad club. I think they've had a player, for the most part, that blows up. Like Miles Michaelis goes into Boston, has a really horrific inning. Same thing for Eric Fetty. Goes into Boston, horrific inning. You've had a couple of games that are just flat out on Chris Roycroft. A couple of games that are just flat out on Ryan Fernandez. You had a game where it was Ryan Helsley in the 9th inning up 4-2, and he blows it. Last night, you had an inning where you had Phil Maton on the mound. You had the lead, and he blows it.
But if it's happening consistently, isn't that the definition of a bad team?
I suppose, but do I think Ryan Helsley is a problem for this team? No. Do I think this offense has mostly been pretty good for them? Yeah. There have been a couple of individual games, though, that I can point to and say, well, what happened there? Griffin Canning's start. What happened? You were able to get nothing in the start that Kodai Senga went up against you. You were able to get nothing offensively in the start where you went up against Christopher Sanchez. So there have been individual moments that I can point to that. Also, their extra innings problems. 0-4 so far this year to start out in extra innings. If you just went 2-2 in those games and you won 2 games, 2 others, last night where you had Phil Maton come into the game where you would have scripted it and he doesn't implode. And one other, again, against Boston where you're up 4-2, 9th inning, you've got Ryan Helsley on the mound. Again, couldn't have scripted that thing any better. Those 4 games, you can't do this, but you switch up the results there, which are, I think, not crazy to say. you're 13-10 right now on the season, and all of us are feeling pretty good about it. That's baseball. You can't flip those scenarios. It happened the way that it did, and now you're 9-14 on a 5-game losing streak, and everybody, including myself, is thinking, uh-oh, this is the moment. It's happening again. You go on the road. You're about to get Milwaukee, which is the team that did it for you last year, and you're about to see your season come to an end once again before you even hit May 1st. That's what's frustrating, but I do not think they're playing as poorly as they did last year. I do not think this is like 2023 where you could look at it and say, that's a bad baseball team. That's a terrible rotation. I don't feel that way this year. I think it's an okay team with clear roster flaws, and I think they're really missing right now the presence that Ivan Herrera brought to the lineup, and I think they're really missing like one more stable reliever like what they had last year with Andrew Kittredge. I think you're really missing those two things, but otherwise, I don't think this is a bad club. I just think they're going to end up with a bad record, and it is what it is.
That equals a bad club. I think I don't know if they're a bad club. They're not a good club, and I think the biggest problem for them is they've got a bad bullpen. Like, we can talk about whack-a-mole. We can talk about, well, maybe they miss Herrera, or maybe the offense is going through a little bit of a rut, or, hey, sometimes it's the rotation blows up. The one consistent that continues to blow up is the bullpen. Like, their bullpen is bad, or to put it as Stewie said, it sucks. They don't have middle relief right now. And their biggest problem last night, look, they scripted it perfectly. I thought maybe Maton wasn't available. That's why I originally thought maybe you push Fetty for another inning. But then Maton turns out to be available. Okay, well then, yeah, I would go Leahy. I would go Maton. I would then go Helsley. I think you managed that perfectly if you're Ollie Marmol. You've got the game in the perfect spot where you want it. Maton kind of has his little blow up. And now you turn to your bullpen. Okay, let's get out of this inning and let's limit the damage. And what happens is, the bottom part of your bullpen doesn't do that. JoJo gives up the one thing he can't give up in that spot, which is the 3-run homer to Sean Murphy.
100%.
It's the middle part of their bullpen. I mean, you mentioned Fernandez. Fernandez has not been good this season. He's given up multiple blow-up innings that have put games away. JoJo Romero now has his moment in this spot. You also had, before he got sent down, Chris Roycroft doing it. Like, there's where their problem is. They've got to start churning through the bullpen arms. They've got to start looking at a Riley O'Brien down in the minors who's been good and say, okay, it's time for him to be up. What do we want to do? Do we want to send down JoJo, or do we just go for righty and send down Fernandez? If they can just get this bullpen to stabilize in the middle part of it, their back end is fine. I trust Leahy. I know Maton had a bad day. I trust Maton, and I trust Ryan Helsley, even though he's had the one blow-up. Those three are going to be fine, I believe. Can you find a way to just get this middle portion of this bullpen to stabilize? If you do, then they will not be a bad club. But when you look at a team, I go back to what Skip Schumacher told us. It was the year that he was managing the Marlins, and they were very good at one-run games, and they made the playoffs. We didn't believe in them at all. They made the playoffs. He said, hey, look, I'll show you a good team in one-run games. It means they've got a good bullpen. The Cardinals 0-5 in one-run games, 0-4 in extra inning games. That right there tells you they've got a bad bullpen. Because what's happening there? Bullpen's not getting the job done. And I get last night's one-run game is a little bit different from others. Bullpen's not getting its job done. It's blowing games. And in extra innings, it's not keeping the game close. It's allowing for the other team to run past you.
Just heads up, JoJo, no options available for him, so he can't be sent down. But yeah, the move would have to be Ryan Fernandez. I just don't know if that's a move that they're going to make. I think they should bring up Riley O'Brien. I think that's the move. They sound like they want to get this figured out at the big league level, though, with Ryan Fernandez. There was a column from Katie Wu over on The Athletic earlier today where she talked about this, and she was talking about the makeup of the bullpen right now and the flexibility that they wanted to have. This was by design, and I don't necessarily hate the way that they've gone about it that way, but if you're going to have that flexibility, you have to utilize it. If you just say to yourself, okay, well, Ryan Fernandez, he has to figure stuff out at the big league level. We got to give it back to where he was last year. That has to happen here. Well, then you don't actually have any of that flexibility that you're talking about. That is a self-dictated result, which is like, if you can't move Fernandez because of your own decision, well, the only flexibility that you have really is with that Swanson spot. And you just called him up.
Yeah.
So are you right now going to send him back down in favor of Riley O'Brien so that way O'Brien then just does what Swanson did, which is come in one game and then you're back down? That's not real flexibility. It's the fake appearance of having flexibility within your bullpen. So I don't know how they're going to handle that. They seem to be talking as if Fernandez has to figure this out at the big league level. And if that's the case, there's really not much you could do about this bullpen right now.
I don't think it's a bad thing that this team just might be a bad team this year. I mean, last couple of years, this team was a bad team before the season even began, and when you were done with it. Like, at least this team, it's important to kind of take a step back and look at where they were 2 years ago versus where they're at right now. This is not the same bad team that they were 2 years ago, but there are going to be growing pains. Totally. And this is the growing pains that you're going to with the Cardinals.
I'll push back on this to an extent. It's one thing if it's growing pains and it is something that is out of control, right? Like, it's one thing like Thomas Sajaci's up here. He's making base rank mistakes. He's a young kid, but he's getting playing time. Victor Scott, say he does something like that. That's the same thing. This is a self-inflicted growing pain that the Cardinals are doing to themselves. I mean, you just mentioned Fernandez, this kind of self-imposed, well, we're not going to send him down even though he has options. Well, you can avoid that growing pain that hurts your big league club. And I get this year is not about winning. They're better than what their record is showing. Like the Pythag, if you want to trust that, the Pythagorean win-loss, which is basically their run differential, they should be one game below 500. That sounds about right based on the way that they have played.
I agree.
But because they aren't willing to churn through this bullpen a little bit and option guys down to work on things, it's self-inflicted wounds that they're putting upon themselves. It's one thing if it was young kids making these mistakes and it's, hey, Jordan Walker's doing this or Victor Scott's doing this, but we got to keep them up here to gain big league experience. I don't feel that way about bullpen arms. I'm sorry. I disagree with the Cardinals on that. Bullpen arms are a fickle business. I don't think there's such a thing as developing bullpen arms to an extent where they believe they're going to develop Fernandez to be here for like 6+ years.
I agree with you on that bullpen. What I meant, the growing pains of like, this is the ups and downs, are those extra innings games that you're losing.
But that's the bullpen to me. Like, I don't think
sometimes your offense hasn't come through for you.
One of them was the offense, but again, what happened in that game? They actually got the lead in that game. The bullpen blew it again, and that was Steven Matz, I think, was the one who ended up blowing that game. And then Roykroft comes in, and then it gets away from him. Like, the extra inning losses have been pinpointed to the bullpen. Sure, if you want to blame the offense for that one against Pittsburgh, I think that's fair. They only scored one run in like 4 tries with a runner at second base, which is ridiculous. Their bullpen is their biggest problem right now that's causing these issues.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. In 15 minutes, we're talking to John Buccigross, ESPN's NHL analyst, broadcaster on the game last night for the Blues versus the Jets. We'll get his thoughts on that game, on this series thus far as well. Again, that's coming up in 15 minutes. Bet it or forget it, coming up next here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. All right, guys, bet it or forget it. When the Cardinals make an announcement later today that Masyn Winn is returning from the injured list, it'll be Thomas Ajayci that gets sent down.
I'm betting this. I think this is going to be the Cardinals' move, and they're going to say, we need everyday at-bats for Thomas Ajayci, and he's not going to get it here. I know people have brought up Luke and Baker. They've brought up Michael Ciani. I just don't feel like that's a Cardinals move in this scenario because they both feel like they have rules according to the Cardinals. So I'm betting this.
I'm betting it as well. I'll get to you, T-Bone, but I wanted to just reiterate everything that Alex just said. All of it. Just times 2. That is my opinion as well. Yours, T-Bone?
Times 3.
I agree. Times 3. I bet it. I think they're going to go path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is, hey, there's no playing time. Send him down. He gets playing time at AAA.
What would you guys do? Just give me a name. We don't have to explain it. We'll get into that coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. But who would be your person to send down? After thinking about it a little bit more, I think I would go with Alec Burleson. And I say that as the president of the Alec Burleson fan club.
I think I would still go Michael Ciani.
I'd go Ciani as well.
Alex, what do you got for us today?
Bet it or forget it, guys. Part of the reason the Blues offense has gone absent is because the defensemen aren't getting involved.
I'll forget it. I think the reason why the offense has gone as silent as it is twofold. One, they are not generating anything to the net. And 2, I'm going to give a lot of credit to the Jets, man. They play a really sound, structured game. There were times this year against the Blues that I would imagine the opposing teams, fans, and media were saying, why aren't you guys getting more shots on net? And the honest answer is because the Blues are good. They were really good at eliminating those opportunities. I felt this way, especially on the power play. I think it was the 3rd period last night, I guess it would have been. They had like 2 or 3 different opportunities, and they got nothing on net, dude. They were suffocating defensively. Some of that's on the Blues not being as direct as they need to be. Some of it's just credit to the opposition. They were really good. So I'll say forget it. I don't think it's because of the defensemen. I think it's because of the Blues not having that pressure and the Jets being better.
I think part of the reason I'm betting this, part of the reason they don't have that pressure is the defensemen not being as involved as they've been in the past. Like Parayko, because he's not 100%, has not been joining the rush, nor has Philip Broberg. Combined between Broberg, Parayko, and Fowler through 2 games, they have a total of 6 shots on goal. And that's just not normal for them, specifically in the offensive zone. So I'm betting, I think part of this is the defensemen are too hesitant to get up into the rush because they don't want to allow any odd man rushes for the Winnipeg Jets.
Guys, bet it or forget it. The Cardinals should hang on to Eric Fedde post-trade deadline and sign him to a contract extension.
Ooh, man. It's going to be $20 million a year, so I'm going to say forget it. I think he's just going to get too much money. One of the reasons why I was always okay with them holding on, one of the reasons that I could understand the argument for them holding on to Fedde, I should restate that.
Nice restatement.
Is because they have the qualifying offer after this year. And $20 million on a 1-year deal for Eric Fedde, that I'm not necessarily opposed to next year. If it gives you the opportunity to take some time with your younger guys. Multi-year $20 million extension, then you could be looking at the next Miles Michaelis for you. So I would not lock him up to that, but it does allow you to wait for the right return for Fedde at the deadline if you decide to go that way.
Yeah, no, I'm not resigning him. I'd trade him at the deadline, depending on what you can get. And he doesn't have strikeout stuff. I think Michael McGreevy can be what Eric Fedde is.
So I lean towards forget it as well. But I do find it a little bit interesting. Would you do like the 3-year? So Severino got 3 by 67. Would you do like 3 by 60? Yeah, that'd be $20 million a year. 3 by 60, because that's not too long a deal. And I actually think, as we're seeing down in the minor leagues, there's even some of their best pitching prospects are starting to break down a little bit.
No, because I think I can get that same deal next year. I don't think you're saving yourself money. And that's the only way I'm re-signing Fedde. Like, I would do 3 by 45 with Fedde. And he's not signing that.
Yeah, no.
He's not going to do it. So I would just say, hey, it's better for both parties involved if we play this thing year by year, and then next year he potentially hits the market for nothing. And you say, cool, we appreciate the 2.5 years of service that you were able to give the Cardinals, and they got that for $30 million. 2.5 years for $30 million for a pitcher as good as Fedde's been so far. That's great. But don't lock yourself into long-term commitments with starting pitchers in the mid-30s. I'm just not doing that.
Yeah, I'm
not
looking,
when they're not elite.
I'm looking for 1 or 2 year deals, lesser, and using McGreevy and Matthews and those guys in my rotation next year.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. We'll get to a couple of these before John Buccigross joins us on the other side. Guys, Bet It or Forget It. The next 4 Stanley Cup champions will all come from the Western Conference. The next 4 Stanley Cup champions will come from the Western Conference. Ooh. That seems pretty crazy. So
yeah,
forget it.
That's aggressive. I mean, I think you'll see a 50-50 split. I think you could see an Eastern Conference and then a Western Conference team every year. I don't think the East wins the Cup this year. I think it's going to be the West. And I think it's going to be the Central Division. It's going to be Winnipeg, Colorado, or Dallas.
Yeah, I would forget this. It's hard to see the Western Conference winning 4 straight. I don't think the West is that much better than the East. I think the West is better, but I don't think it's that much better for the long run.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, bet it or forget it. By the end of the season, everybody will agree that Nolan Gorman needs to be traded.
Bet it.
I'd say bet it. I think people are mostly there already.
I think with JC and J.J. Weatherholt, people are going to be like, we don't see where the role is for Nolan Gorman. The power's not there, so bet it.
I'm going to bet it because of the situation. You've got Donovan, who's been great. He's got to play somewhere. You've got Weatherholt, who's coming up through the minor leagues, and JC. I don't think it'll necessarily be because of performance so much as it is somebody has to go. Who's the guy? And I could see them deciding Nolan Gorman is the one that ultimately has to go. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, John Buccigross joins us here on the show. He was on the call last night for the Blues versus the Jets. What do you make of the game? What has he made of this series thus far? We'll talk to Bucci about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Taryn Hendricks here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues fell to the Winnipeg Jets 2-1 as they now trail in the series 2-0. Game 3 will be back here in St. Louis on Thursday night. We'll have pregame coverage starting on Thursday at 7:30 with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 8:30 with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, and Joey Vitale. And then the Cardinals lost last night to the Atlanta Braves as they fall 7-6. They'll be back in action tonight at Atlanta as Andre Plante will get the start for the Cardinals as 6:15 will be first pitch. This portion is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by one of our favorite guests here on BK and Ferrario. He was on the call last night for the Blues versus the Winnipeg Jets over on the ESPN feed. He's John Buccigross joining us on BK and Ferrario. You can see his work over at ESPN, and of course you can follow him on Twitter at Buccigross, Buccigross. John, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
Doing great. I just shoved a donut in my pie hole, so I'm really happy right now. Instant dopamine. The Boston Cream Tim Hortons here in downtown Toronto.
I was just going to ask, John, what type of donut, and you answered my question for me. I was curious if it was that or if you were going to go just like straight 12 donut holes.
Yeah, no, I'm a 2-donut guy. When I'm in New England, I tend to go with the Boston Cream and the coconut, the white coconut donut. I guess I'm one of the few people who like white coconut donuts.
My wife's go-to.
But here... Yeah, but that's not an option here in Tim Hortons. So I just went traditional glaze, get the pucks in deep, pucks to the net, and then the Boston Cream with my coffee. So yeah, I'm really happy right now.
All right,
you got a Bucci in a good mood.
Yeah,
that's good.
I love it.
And I know last night you were enjoying the physicality. Unfortunately, here in St. Louis, we weren't enjoying the end result of that game. Bucci, I'm just curious, kind of 10,000-foot view of the series thus far, and we can get into the micro of what we saw last night. How have you felt while watching this Blues versus Winnipeg Jets series thus far from a overall big picture standpoint?
Well, it's the heaviest series for sure. The most hitting, the late 90s, early aughts hockey, which I love. And so their styles are very similar. And, in the end, it's really probably going to come down to the big guys getting the job done. We saw that in Game 1. Robert Thomas got the first goal of the series. The Blues should have won that game. They just, failed to protect the lead. In the third, anytime you're leading in the third in the Stanley Cup playoff game, you got to expect to kind of close that deal. And then last night, Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, their two best scorers, scored for Winnipeg, and that was enough. But, the Blues have to be pretty happy. They had 4 power play chances, scored on 1, only gave up 2 to Winnipeg. They talked about managing their emotions. They certainly did that. They scored in the power play. Jimmy Snuggerud looked really good last night. He played like an adult, not a guy who's playing in his 9th NHL game, 7 regular season, 2 postseason, got his first goal. So, there was a lot there. And Winnipeg blocked a lot of shots. They had 14 blocked shots. And so, for the most part, St. Louis had to feel pretty good. It's just one of those tight games, top break on the puck hitting Snuggerud's stick. Otherwise, they don't beat Binnington at all. And then, of course, the Connor goal was tough. That was just tic-tac-toe. Looks like Broberg got beat behind the net and then goes to Perfetti. Then Connor just, Binnington can't get down quick enough to stop that. He's got to be on his feet when the puck's behind the net so he can push off. And then, bam, it was so fast. Just an elite goal from a great passer and one of the elite goal scorer. And that's how you lose. That's all it takes. But it was close enough where they could have got that win. And then let's face it, for the Blues, that's what it's going to be like. Stay close, low scoring, and hope you get a bounce or two. They didn't get the bounce with the Snuggerud play. And so they came a little bit short.
Bucci, you called a lot of the Blues game down the stretch out of that Four Nations break, so you saw when they were at their best. What stands out to you about their lack of offense in these first 2 games against the Jets?
Well, they're playing the best defensive team in the NHL. Number 1 goal prevention team, Winnipeg. Robert Thomas looks great. Jordan Kyrou, I couldn't believe how fast he looked these last couple of games. He's flying, especially Game 1. Wow, is he cooking. Like I said, Snuggerud looks very comfortable. It's Bolduc's first go-around. He hasn't looked as obvious as Snuggerud has out there in terms of, providing offense. But overall, I've kind of liked overall that Shen is really involved. He played a great game last night, physical, making things happen offensively. Again, they had their chances. Just a couple little things breakdown. Letty stumbled. He got beat wide by Scheifele coming down in his off wing, and then unfortunately Snuggerud accidentally kicked it in. And then, like I said, behind that looks like Broberg just got beat a little bit by Scheifele, a great player, a legitimate NHL star, and that's all it takes. It's razor thin this time of year. So yeah, it's going to be hard to score against Winnipeg because, like I said, they're the best goal prevention team in the league. But go back home, have last change. You might get some matchups you like. Jim Montgomery can do that well, and so maybe they have a chance to get that. They got 3-4 goals. They got a good chance to win. But again, this Winnipeg team can also score. Third highest scoring team in terms of goals in the league, goals for. So this is an elite team they're playing. So they're going to have to be at their very best. And for the most part, they were last night. A bad break and just a couple chances they could have scored. But Hellebuck is going to win the Vezina. He's going to get MVP votes. And so it's going to be a tough task, especially now. You're going to somehow beat this team 4 out of 6 times that won the President's Trophy.
We're talking to John Buccigross here on 101 ESPN, who was on the call last night for the Blues versus the Jets in Winnipeg. Bucci, we talked about this yesterday, the importance of Game 2 in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Teams that go up 2-0 while at home are about 90% in terms of their win expectancy for a playoff series. You sound a little more optimistic than some of us are locally based on the way that the Blues have played thus far. Not necessarily that they'll win, but just where they're at compared to Winnipeg. How do you view the rest of this series? What's your outlook for it?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, I don't know. They don't expect to win the Stanley Cup this year. They're going with some young players. They're making a slight transition this year. They really miss Holloway. I'm so bullish on him. But, getting Snuggerud some of these reps, getting Bolduc some of these reps, getting Broberg some of these reps, that's going to be good for them. And then as they go into next season, and again, you have Holloway a year older, all these guys a year older. Kyrou a year older. He might turn into a 40-goal scorer. Okay, he's got 30 goals. 3 straight years, so maybe he can pop in 40. Robert Thomas is an elite center iceman. Maybe needs to shoot just a tad more, maybe on occasion. But again, all those forwards they have, that was the plan by Doug Armstrong. Accumulate these guys in their early 20s to mid 20s, and we're not going to tank. And he was able to get Holloway, and Bolduc looks like a player. Stuggerud looks like a player. You got Kyrou and Thomas. Man, you got a top 6 all of a sudden. These guys, these GMs can always build a bottom 6 like Winnipeg did. All these big, strong, linebacker-heavy guys that you win with during the playoffs, and that'll be the next step, continuing to, just slightly better the bottom 6, and then defensively figure out, what is their plan here going forward. Some spots they're older, and in some spots, they're younger, so they're kind of maybe a bit in between when it comes to the blue line. That's probably the area that they're going to look, what can we do there to really make a jump next year and maybe be in that top 5 in the West among all the teams, because obviously Binnington's a winner. And so, yeah, overall, I like where the team is. But, yeah, certainly not optimistic for the series now. It's just hard, like we said, to beat a team either 4 in a row or 4 out of 5 or 4 out of 6, especially when that team's a 116-point team. They're going to get Velarde back eventually, probably Game 4. Ehlers won't play in this series for Winnipeg. So, yeah, again, you never know. Hockey's amazing. The teams have certainly lost their first 2 games and won 4 in a row. They've lost 2 games at home and won 4 in a row. And so it's possible. Winnipeg isn't world beaters. You just stop Scheifele and Connor, and after that, there's not a lot of guys who scare you offensively. Last night, those guys both scored, unfortunately, and you fell a little short.
Bucci, the speed has been an area of emphasis for Blues fans over the last couple of years, and they've seen it now. You mentioned Kyrou. Snuggerud's got some wheels. So does Dylan Holloway. Does it feel like, though, after 2 games in this series, that maybe the Blues lack a little bit of size, whether it's up front or on the back end?
That's possible. Certainly, and again, this time of year, we know how important it is to be heavy. Certainly, obviously, Parayko's big. Broberg's got good size. He'll get more sturdy. Fowler's fine. Fowler's not little. Suter's older, obviously. Tucker played a physical game as well. And up front, obviously, Toropchenko's a big dude. Neighbors plays big. For sure, Fox is a sturdy, veteran guy. Buchnevich is a big fella, so I wouldn't say that. I don't think, Walker certainly plays a fine game, so I really don't think they really have any small, light guys really at all. So I think they're okay in that area.
One more, Bucci, from me. Jimmy Snuggerud, you've seen a lot of him. I know we talked a couple of years ago when he was in college, and you had told us that, this kid's going to be an NHL player. We've seen, 7 games in the NHL, including 2 playoffs where he scores last night. What's the ceiling of a kid like Jimmy Snuggerud in the NHL?
Yeah, he just looks great. He can skate. He has obviously a great shot. He's a great kid. I loved how he went back for his 3rd year. I just wish more of these college kids would do that. Take a leadership role in years 2 and 3. That just helps your development when you get to the league. And you're just more of a man, more of an adult. He turns 21 here later this year. So next year he comes in as a 21-year-old young man, not a 19-year-old boy almost still. So I just think he has good upside. I think he's going to be a really good 30-goal, 40-assist guy. Probably, I don't know if he's a point-per-game guy, but certainly close. He could certainly develop into that, but certainly, getting going here, I don't see why he can't be a 60-point guy next year, 60 to 75 if everything goes really well. Should be a good power play guy, as we saw last night. That was an elite wrist shot. So overall, yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm sure they are with Jimmy Snuggerud, the way he played last night, and good things going forward. Again, with him and Holloway, and like I said, Bolduc and Kyrou and Thomas are still very young. I mean, the Blues are going to be good for the next, 7 to 10 years. They're in great shape as an organization.
All right, Bucci, we'll get you out of here on this one. I heard your call last night. I was watching on the ESPN feed, and when Shin laid that hit, you could feel the emotion through the screen. Describe to us listening right now here in St. Louis what was going through your mind, for that hit in specifically, but also the hit that was laid on Kyrou. What was it like to watch some throwback hockey last night for you?
Well, I love the Shen one because it was right in front of me. Winnipeg has a great vantage point. These Canadian rinks are almost like a gondola effect. You kind of hang over the rink. It's a great way to call a hockey game. And the States, you tend to be way up and far back, although I appreciate St. Louis. They put us down one section, so it's really a good vantage point. But so I could see Shen. I'm looking right down. Again, it's almost like a helicopter view, and I can see him going right at him from 40 feet. I could see it coming. So I could time it like you would time when Chris Berman used to do SportsCenter highlights and the pitch would come in, he'd go boom, just as the bat hit the ball, because you could time it. And for me, I could time that hit because Shen was an absolute, he was possessed last night. I mean, it was, I love when those hockey players get possessed in the postseason and just are absolutely destroying people. And I could see it coming, so I could time out the wow just as he hit him. And it was the best hit of the night, best hit of the postseason so far. And that's just that raw human animal emotion that we love, that testosterone. That's why we like UFC fights and hockey games and football tackles, and that's just pure animal stuff.
John Buccigross is the ESPN NHL analyst and broadcaster who was on the call last night for the Blues versus the Jets. Bucci, always great to catch up with you, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. Great call last night on the game. Hopefully we'll talk with you again soon if the Blues are able to get back into this thing.
Reward yourself another donut, Bucci.
That's right.
God bless America. God bless St. Louis. I'm high on donuts. Amen. Good night.
Take it easy. That's John Buccigross joining us here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate his time as always. That hit was amazing.
Yeah.
That was the highlight of Snuggerud's goal, of course, was the highlight because
in terms of hits, that and the Logan Stanley hit on Jordan Kyrou, those were the hit highlights of the series. Yeah. And I mean, he's right. Shen is a man possessed, and I think that's a really good thing for the Blues. You have lost a little bit of that offense from him, but he makes up with the offense of trying to create space for his line mates. And it's not just he's going out there to hit because he's got nothing else. He's trying to create space, because what Winnipeg is doing is Winnipeg is just saying, cool, run into us, we'll find a way around you. You've got to hit through the body to start to create some doubt.
He's also hoping the hits pay dividends down the stretch, right? If you get a really good lick in on somebody, the belief is now they're going to be turning their head. They're going to take that extra second to see who's coming, and that's what I was going to bring up. It has paid dividends for the Jets. Kyrou did not look like the same player after he got absolutely destroyed last night. Now, I will give a lot of credit to the Jets. I don't think I've noticed that from them, because the Blues have had some pretty damn good hits in this series thus far. And they're still making the plays, man. They're still going through quickly. It does not feel as if they're taking that extra beat, and the Blues at times are, especially with Jordan Kyrou. Not a shot against Kyrou. I also wouldn't have I wouldn't have come back into the game.
Yeah, I mean, I give
would
that
have
guy
been
credit.
Retired after that hit last night.
Even Joey said it, and I agree. Like, I've earned so much respect for him because he was on the bench. Barilli, you saw the video, holding his arms in the air to try and catch his breath, and he skipped, I think, 2 shifts and then was back out there. Now, did he change the way he played? Absolutely, but I give the guy credit for staying on that bench because if it's me, I'm back in the locker room and I'm not coming back out even if they tell me I'm good to go.
So that game against Pittsburgh, that was the game that he had the hit in overtime?
No, that was Detroit. He laid
Detroit,
DeBrincat
that's
out.
the one.
Yeah.
So that's 2 within a 2-week stretch where Kyrou has been involved with. I think those might have been the 2 biggest hits that I've seen from the Blues over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, but it was
both involved Kyrou.
It was smart to pick DeBrincat because he's smaller than you. So if you're Kyrou, you go for the smaller guy. What's unfortunate for him is a dude who's 6'7", 237 pounds lined him up.
And also picked the smaller guy.
Yeah, like, okay, let's stop it, okay? Let's pick on somebody your own size.
He's Alex Estibo, and I'm BK. If you missed any of our conversation with John Buccigross, go ahead and check that out on the podcast page after the show today, 101ESPN.com, or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. Those are, of course, presented and sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
Coming up next, it's time for the jump drawer here on BK and Ferrario.
Lowry. Shed! Absolutely levels Lowry.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, when you're driving somewhere, even if you're relatively comfortable, you think you know how to get there, do you still put it in your GPS? Or are you a guy that immediately you're like, I know where I'm going. I'm going to go the way that I always go. Like today, I dropped off Luca at Kara's aunt's place, where we typically take him to her cousin. That's who watches Luca during the day. That is our quote-unquote daycare, right? Today, I took him out to her aunt's place. I've been to her aunt's place probably a dozen times. I know how to get there, but I still put it in just to make sure, like, hey, is there any traffic? Is there anything like that? I'll put it in there for that. Same thing when I left there, I put the station in, just, again, to make sure, am I going the quickest path, that kind of thing. Do you always, generally speaking, put stuff into your GPS? And if so, do you follow that to a T?
I always do, but I don't use it when I get in the car. I always do to find out how long it's going to take me to get there and where there's traffic.
Gotcha.
Because, like, I'll put it on my phone every morning when I take the girls to their daycare, and I'm saying, okay, how bad is 270? Because can I take 141, or do I need to take 270 because 141 is going to be a disaster?
You use it to dictate your path more so than to, like, go that specific.
But as soon as I get in my car, I turn the map off, because if I know where I'm going, I don't need it. Now, there are times to where I'm somewhere that I'm unfamiliar. I know where I'm going and how to get there, but I want to make sure I don't make the wrong turn. But, like, as soon as I get on a highway that I know where I'm at, I turn it off as soon as I get in the car.
Yeah. I am, if I know where I'm going, I will just look it up. Unless there is, like, what I mean, when I got to be there at a specific time, right? Like for work. For example, when I lived with my grandparents 30 minutes south of here, I would always look up, okay, is it fastest for me to be on 270? Because I got to be here by whatever it was. I think 9 o'clock then. But if there is no time restraints on it, I know I got to be somewhere. There's no, like, necessary I got to be there at a specific time. I'll just take the path that I know. No need for me to look it up.
So the reason I ask is because in Indonesia, a man was going to his friend's house and followed the directions to a T, and it ended in disaster. On April 5th, an unusual and dangerous accident in Indonesia has left many shocked after a 61-year-old man and his co-pilot fell 12 meters off of a bridge after following the Google Map directions exactly. The incident occurred while the driver was headed to a friend's house, completely trusting the route suggested by the Maps app. According to CNN, the app suddenly changed direction mid-trip, taking them straight to an unfinished bridge. Unaware of the danger, the driver continued moving forward, and the result was a fall onto a busy road. Fortunately, the car landed in a clear area, avoiding a major tragedy. Despite the 12-meter fall and total destruction of the car, both the driver and his 46-year-old passenger only suffered minor injuries.
It's super dark for me to be laughing at this, but the only thing I can think of is the scene from The Office when Michael's following the GPS, and Dwight's like, Michael, there's no road here. It's leading to the lake. And he goes, the GPS, there's no road here. And he drives right into the water. Like, how do you approach an unfinished bridge and be like, dude, there's no road here. It says we have to go this way. Pew. That was the only reason I was laughing.
I remember I was in Denver, and my grandma, like, never uses GPS. She's like, I know where to go. I have lived here my entire life. I know the roads to take. I know where to go, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Grandma, I'm just going to check, see if there's traffic. Like, I totally trust you that you know where to go. But we're going to get on this highway. If you've ever been to Denver during rush hour, it's a bleeping nightmare. We're going to get on this highway. It's going to take us an hour and a half to get to the airport from here, because it's in, like, a different country, basically, when you go over to Denver. I trust her. I'm like, all right, Grandma, we'll go your way. We get on the highway. It takes us like an hour to get what should have been a 25-minute drive. So the reason why I bring that up is because she is the opposite, where she will not trust anything the GPS says. She'll, like, get in the car and I'm listening to the GPS. She's like, oh, don't go that way. That's taking you the longer route. I'm like, Grandma, it's telling me this is the shortest path. It's got to be right. So I will trust it implicitly, not quite to this degree.
Yeah, but you don't trust it when
damn close.
You don't trust it when the bridge is unfinished and it says, well, I got to go this way, so maybe there's an imaginary bridge here. Michael, there's no road here. It says to go. It's a lake.
Oh, boy.
That's the only reason I was laughing.
I'm
super dark, but
I'm just even trying to picture. Well, it didn't recalculate, so I guess we have to fall off.
And like, what happens while you're falling? Like, are you thinking that damn map told me this was the way to go?
That has to be the longest 3 seconds of your life.
Oh, for
Where
sure.
you know
that you bleeped
I
up.
just screwed up.
Yeah.
So
I'm
incredibly
amazed
bad.
actually that there's not more lawsuits on GPS companies because of that. Because I guarantee that's happened a lot more than we know about.
It is honestly amazing how quickly they are able to update. Like immediately following, whether it's traffic or if there's like a change in any of the road, it's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do with that. I still remember when we were younger and we would like print out the MapQuest to get somewhere.
Oh my God,
and
dude.
then if you miss a turn, you're just screwed.
Yeah, and when you're driving
like,
at night.
How do I get back to make sure that I get to where I needed to turn now? Oh, it's a
Dude, there were
disaster.
so many times to where it was night and you were driving to somebody's house and you can't see the street sign. And so I'm holding this piece of paper while you're going 10 miles an hour and you're turning your brights on me like, is that the turn? Nope. And then you missed it. And then, like you said, you got to go back the way. Like, you got to circle back to like step 3 of MapQuest so that you could get to the house you were going to.
Coming up in 15 minutes, who should the Cardinals send down in favor of Masyn Winn when he returns from the injured list, likely later on this afternoon? We'll talk about that in 15 minutes. But next, what's your biggest takeaway thus far from the series between the Blues and the Jets? 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube chat is available for you at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. We'll give you our takeaway. You give us yours coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about my friends out at Ted Drew's, that famous frozen custard destination off of Chippewa, which has been a St. Louis tradition since 1929. It is open, which means the warm weather is here, which means it's time to schedule the time for you and your family to get out to Ted Drew's and sit in the parking lot, enjoy that tradition that has been here for over 95 years, a family tradition that year-round Ted Drew's has been delivering that delicious frozen custard. And you can mix and match whatever flavors you want. Right now, they've got those specialty flavors in honor of the Blues being back home for the playoffs. Go get the Blue Note. It's the delicious vanilla custard. It's mixed with a blend of fresh blueberries, smooth lemon cream, graham crackers, served as a concrete or a sundae. And you can also buy it in bulk, bring it home, have it whenever you want, that Ted Drew's frozen custard. And while you're there, walk across the parking lot, check out the Ted Drew's gift shop where you can shop apparel, you can shop souvenirs, hats, and you can also get Ted Drew's gift cards. Off of Chippewa, it's time to get out there. Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
I think as a group, we're not happy to be down 2-0, but the games are really close. There's not much separation going on right now. We need to make a separation. We need to find another level here when we go home so that we can end up on top by a goal.
That was Jim Montgomery after the game last night. I was going to say Jimmy Snuggerud. That's obviously not Jimmy Snuggerud. Jim Montgomery after the game last night on how he feels about the series through the first two games. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, I want to start with you. What is your takeaway from the road portion of this series between the Blues and the Jets? Been close in terms of the overall results, 5-3, but one of those was an empty netter, and then 2-1 last night. How do you feel coming off of the first two games?
I don't feel like this team is outplaying the Blues significantly. I think there have been periods that have gone the opposite direction. I agree with Buccigross. I think you let a game go in game number one because you were the better team until the third period and you just ran out of gas. In the game last night, I felt like you were the better team in the first period, and Winnipeg just found their game and they scored early in the third. There's a couple of areas that the Blues have to improve on, and I don't know if they can do it at the strength that they're at right now in terms of injury, and it feels a lot like even strength. Even strength is the area that Winnipeg is just significantly better. But, man, it also feels like you could change the tides if you win one game. If you can pick up a win in one game, maybe you could put that doubt back into Winnipeg. And the Blues have that opportunity in front of them when they come home and they do get these matchups to where they have the decision of what works best. And I'll be curious to see how Jim Montgomery handles it. But, look, those first two games, if they would have entered this series and been blown out of the water by Winnipeg and looked like they didn't even deserve to be in the playoffs, there'd be more alarm bells going off. I have not felt like Winnipeg has just blown you out of the water in this series. I feel like you've slipped up a couple of times, and Winnipeg has pounced on the mistakes that you've made.
Yeah, they maybe haven't blown you out of the water. They clearly are the better team at 5-on-5. And I think that's how the series, I think this tells you, hey, this series is probably over. Now, will it be a 4-game sweep? No, maybe the Blues get one game. But I don't see the answers coming for the Blues at 5-on-5. We talked about matchups, right? We were talking about, hey, home ice, what do you do when you get the matchups with JR? I don't know if they've got an answer to slow down the Connor line, the Schlafly line.
Shifley.
Schlafly, the beer
is a
line?
very good brewery here in town.
When I had that process through my head, I thought that didn't sound right. But now I know why. But
I wonder why.
I don't think they've got answers for them. And I think it's twofold. One, the Jets are just a very good team, as we've brought up multiple times. And two, the Blues just aren't at 100% right now. I mean, you're missing arguably your best player in Dylan Holloway, and then Robert Thomas and Cole Prego don't look like themselves. This series, to me, feels like it's over. I don't see the answers coming for the St. Louis Blues. I don't think they're going to be able to generate enough offense at 5-on-5. That's my biggest takeaways. The Jets are better than I gave them credit for at 5-on-5, and they're taking advantage of it. They're out shooting the Blues. They're out chancing the Blues. They've outscored the Blues so far at 5-on-5. That's all she wrote if that's going to be the case, and I don't see the answers coming for St. Louis.
No, I don't either. I think what you're seeing is the Jets are what the Blues hope to become. They're not all that far away. I mean, we're seeing that in the series. I think the Blues have been pretty, I don't want to say significantly. The Blues have been outplayed so far. Winnipeg has been the better team. But what you're seeing from Winnipeg, like Shifley is in the role right now that we hope Robert Thomas becomes over the next 2 to 3 years. The guy on a cup contender. Connor is basically for them what maybe you hope Jimmy Snuggerud can become for you. That shot is real. It is terrifying. And every time the puck goes toward Kyle Connor, you're worried about the possibility that he's going to put it in the back of the net for you. The depth of scoring that they have, the defensemen that can get involved in the offense, the fact that they have a goalie that really leads the way for them, and he's the thing that makes it all go. Like, that is what the Blues hope to become. And so, in a weird way, I'm kind of rooting for the Winnipeg to have success this postseason. I want to see another team win the way that the Blues did. Because while I think, maybe you can make an argument that Kyle Connor is a star, and if they go on a run this year, he probably will be viewed that way, I don't know that most casual hockey observers would say Kyle Connor is on that level. The Blues don't necessarily have somebody that's above the Kyle Connor level. Same thing for Shifley. That's pretty similar to where Robert Thomas is. You could make an argument that you think Thomas could be higher than that. Cool. But their star is the goalie. And for the Blues, I would bet most people nationally view Jordan Binnington as their star right now. He's the biggest name. He's the guy that people remember from the 2019 run. So I think what you're witnessing as a Blues fan, at least for me, is we are seeing what it should look like whenever the Blues get to the end of this maturation process. And they are a fully formed team that can go into the contention window. So that to me is my biggest takeaway is you're looking at what the other side of this transition should look like for the Blues.
I do wonder, like, smaller picture, not going the macro here, but I do wonder if Doug Armstrong, because we've seen this in the past, every time teams have success in the playoffs, you become a copycat league. And depending on how far Winnipeg goes, I do wonder if the Blues look at this and say, we have to bulk up a little bit. And I know Buccigross said, like, they've got big players. They've got an issue establishing the net front presence. And it was an issue there for a long time, even after Jim Montgomery took over, of him saying and clamoring, we got to get to the net more. We got to get to the net more. Look, it is an area that is not fun to play, and it's an area that is going to hit roller coasters because injuries take place. But whether it's in front of your net or in front of their net, you've been getting pushed around a lot. And even Jim Montgomery, he said it before the series began. The series is going to be dictated on net front battles and who wins them. He said it after game number 2. We weren't battling hard enough to get to the front of the net. I don't know where you make the upgrades. I don't know how you make the upgrades. Or I don't know if you even believe you need upgrades. But to me, it is very noticeable that you just don't match up well against that Winnipeg Jets size. Now, maybe this looks different when Dylan Holloway's playing and Thomas is 100% and Parayko's 100%, but with the way that the Central Division is built and is going to be headed in the next couple of years, because Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, they're not going anywhere. Minnesota is going to be getting better because their salary cap opens up, and Utah is going to be spending money. These are all teams that you have had struggles with in the regular season over the past couple of years. And I do wonder if you look at this series, if you get swept or the gentleman's sweep, and say, we might need to bulk up a little bit.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Ask for some of your thoughts on the series thus far. I want to get to some of these. We can kind of react as we go along here. From the 618, guys, my biggest takeaway, I miss Holloway. They clearly rushed Parayko. Thomas may be hurt to the point of injured. And holy bleep, Buchnevich shoot the mother-loving puck.
Yeah, I mean, he's been one of the guys, too, that has kind of disappeared for the Blues in this playoffs. And honestly, he hasn't been the defensive. I don't know if I would say they rushed Parayko. I mean, Parayko was 6 to 8 weeks. It was 6 weeks when he came back. And look, this isn't the Blues telling him you need to come back. This is Parayko probably saying, I want to come back. And this is what nobody is 100% in the playoffs. I'm not making excuses for the Blues. Winnipeg's probably just as banged up as the Blues are. Sometimes, though, injuries
look a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, they do. But sometimes injuries impact players differently than what other injuries are. For the other injuries could just be, yeah, I'm worn down. Some injuries are, my knee was dislocated, and then we figured out to put it back together so I can play. Or in Robert Thomas's sense, yeah, the ankle's probably jacked from when he fell in the faceoff versus Utah, but he's good enough to play in a hockey game.
Yeah, Parayko, I don't think they rushed him back because if I remember correctly, I thought he looked good in the 2 games prior to the playoffs. Like the 2 games that he got to play before they started the series, I thought he looked fine. It makes me wonder if it's been either re-aggravated or if it's something else. I don't want to speculate on that. Buchnevich is the one that I don't know if it's so much the shooting. Buch is going to have to be better, especially if Robert Thomas is not 100%. For Buch being this two-way forward that the Blues decided to hand a contract extension to, They need more from him in this series. He has got to become a more responsible defensive player. He's the one who was standing as that puck whizzed by him yesterday, and Connor ends up scoring that goal. And he's just non-existent right now offensively for the Blues. So he is a guy that they definitely need more from as this series continues on.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 618, guys, you're acting like the Blues are getting outplayed by miles. We were winning the game going into the third period and then tied going into the third. Played 2 crap periods. That's ultimately the difference. I guess I see the seconds as being different. I feel like the perspective that you have on the second period from game 1 and game 2 is ultimately probably how you feel about the series. I think the first periods have been in favor of the Blues. I don't think anybody would argue that. You guys agree?
I'd agree.
Blues have been the better team in the first period each of the first 2 games. Mm-hmm. The third period, nobody would argue. Winnipeg has been the better team each of the first 2 games. Ultimately, it comes down to how do you feel about the second? And to me, in game 1, it was about the power play. Like you were holding on because the power play was able to keep you in it. And in game 2, I thought Winnipeg was just better in the second period.
Yeah, I mean, I
think that's really what it comes down to.
I think the period that they've been outplayed in is the third period in both games. And Curbs even had
We
it on
all
his
agree
final
with that.
call. I mean, they got third period yips. I think they were good in the second period of game number one. Yes, the power play helped them, but they exchanged blows at even strength. Jordan Kyrou had 2 breakaways in that second period at even strength, and they didn't score on them. I don't think they've been outplayed in the second period. I think they've exchanged blows. The third period is where Winnipeg just basically says, we've got more in the tank. And the Blues just seemingly don't have anything in the tank. The first game was, we're on top one by a goal. Let's hold on to this. And you can't do that in the playoffs. And the third period of yesterday's game, it was very evident that Winnipeg knew what they needed to do to take the lead. And when they did, they were like, you're not going to get past us. That's why the net front presence to me is so important. Look at where Winnipeg has scored their goals. With the exception of the Kyle Connor one-time shot, all of the goals have been scored right in front of Jordan Binnington. You're getting beat in front of your own net. And with the exception of the Oscar Sundqvist goal, you have not scored a goal in front of the net. They've been absolute snipes, but you can't do that against Connor Hellebuck. So I don't feel like they've been massively outplayed with the exception of the third period, and it's just the Blues don't have anything in the tank when they get there.
Yeah, we did get this from Angry Dan. Guys, the Blues didn't play great and barely lost both games. I'm not worried. It would be nice if they had Holloway back healthy, though. I think that's totally
Angry
fair.
Dan's not angry?
Apparently not.
Kind of calm, Dan.
Go, Dan.
I think that's a reasonable perspective. I am probably lower on their play in the first 2 games than most of our text line is, certainly than you are, Alex. I don't think they've been destroyed. I don't think this is some like massive liability.
Yeah.
They have not been a horrible team. I think they've just been slightly outplayed. I think Winnipeg has been the better team for the first 2 games of the series, and I think they are the better team. So am I worried? Like, I guess it depends. What am I worried about? Am I worried they're going to lose? Yes, I expect them to lose in this series. I thought that was the case going in. I certainly feel that now that they're down 2-0, and 87% of the time, team that goes up 2-0 ends up winning the series. And if you look at it for the teams that started at home, it's 89% of the time. Those teams go on to win. So I think Winnipeg's winning the series. But am I worried in the big picture? No. I think you're in a really good spot right now. As we talked about with Bucci, you have a lot of young players that are getting playoff experience. Hopefully this pays dividends for them down the road. I think it allows for Army to look at his team and say, okay, where are we still deficient? And whenever you look at that and decide where you're deficient, how do we explore opportunities to improve there? What does that look like for the blue line for them this offseason? Do they consider upgrading down the middle? Do they think they're maybe a little further along at this point than they previously anticipated? And hey, for me, man, now we're seeing how important Dylan Holloway is. Not that we didn't know during the regular season, but now you're really seeing it based on the performance of that second line. It would give me even more reason to believe they should go ahead and give him that extension this offseason. Like, I would be highly motivated to go ahead and get that done. That's really my big picture view on what this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's very evident who the core pieces of this team are. And you're seeing the advancement of Jimmy Snuggerud, and we're talking about how massive of a hole you've got with no Dylan Holloway, and even when Philip Broberg was injured. I'll be really curious whenever the end of the season is, when Doug Armstrong has that end of the season post press conference, what his take on this team was following their series. Because, again, the NHL is a copycat league. And when another team beats you in the playoffs, you look at it, and typically GMs look at it and say, what did they do to beat us, and how can we replicate that? And I'll be curious what Doug Armstrong's answer is that is.
All right, he's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line to get involved in the show. In 15 minutes, we're going to dive into some NFL quick hitters. There's some speculation that there might be a trade in the top 5 of this year's NFL draft. I want to get your thoughts on that coming up in 15 minutes, Alex. But next, who should the Cardinals send down when they decide to bring Masyn Winn off of the injured list? I think we all have a differing perspective on this. We'll get to it next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Mentioned before the break, we're going to talk about who the Cardinals should send down before or whenever they get Masyn Winn back off the injured list. Our guess is that will be at some point today prior to today's game. Text line from the 314 said, guys, if they're able to send him down, it should be Burleson or Gorman. Should probably just trade Gorman, honestly. I cannot see the long-term future for either one of them, especially now that Contreras is playing at first base. I think the one that is a one-for-one trade with Masyn Winn, right-handed bat, has been playing some shortstop, is Thomas Saggese, right? That would be the one that, for the Cardinals, you're looking for the path of least resistance, which is typically what they do. Thomas Saggese is the one that goes down as Masyn Winn is brought off of the injured list. But he's been playing so well, and that's why this has now become a conversation. So it's Michael Ciani. I don't think Nolan Gorman is going to be a part of this conversation, but you could throw him in if you wanted to, as in terms of what you would want them to do, maybe more so than what they will actually do. And then Alec Burleson. Those are the lefty bats that are in play. Thomas Saggese is the one right-handed bat that is in play. Alex, for me, I think I would go with Alec Burleson. And that sounds strange given the fact that I have been a staunch supporter of Alec Burleson throughout his time here with the Cardinals. I think there's a good hitter in there. We're just not seeing that version of him right now. And if you're going to keep him here, I'm not sure what the role is for him with Gorman just flat out hitting Alec Burleson currently. He does not allow for much flexibility. I would send him down, get him right offensively. And then whenever he is right, there's probably going to be another roster move that you can bring him back up to the big league club for. But last year, he got off to a great start, was not the same player in the second half of the season, really fell off a cliff, and you're seeing the same version of him right now. Still has not yet barreled a ball. So for me, he's the guy that brings the least flexibility to the roster. And so far, he has not produced. If we're going to make this about production, it was for Victor Scott. I think it should be for Thomas Saggese. That would be the way that I would go about it. And yes, I understand that complicates things for Ollie Marmol. He's basically got 10 or 11 dudes for 9 spots in the lineup. It's not an easy thing to navigate, but it's the job. And this year, none of it is going to be easy for him.
Yeah, mine is still Michael Ciani. I don't see the necessity of having Michael Ciani for this team where he's getting maybe one inning every other game. I think you've got your center fielder. You've made that pretty clear with the ups and downs so far early on, and you know Lars Nootbaar can be a center fielder for you in a pinch if you need to. I wouldn't send Saggese down if it's me, and I would send Michael Ciani down because I don't see the role for Ciani, and even if it's only here and there at bats for Saggese, you said it best. To me, this is the job for Ollie. Like, they wanted to go with a youth movement. You got to find out what these guys have to offer, find ways to get everybody the at-bats. But, yeah, I would go Ciani. I wouldn't go Burleson, and I know he has struggled, but I'd keep him up here and hope that he works through it at the major league level.
Yeah, I agree with the Ciani move. I think you send down Ciani. I just don't see the need as much for the Hands team, and it's because of Walker's defense. I mean, Jordan Walker has become a above-average defender, slightly above average. He's not great by any means, but his first step looks better. He's got a cannon of an arm. And just go to the play last night where they turned to Jojo Romero against Michael Harris. He gets the fly ball into right field. Victor Scott makes the catch, and Scott's got an above-average arm, but Walker's got a better arm. And if Walker makes that catch, who knows what happens? He's probably able to get that ball to the plate and at least make that play a little bit closer compared to Scott, whose ball gets cut off by Contreras, who is the cutoff man there. So I don't see the role for Michael Ciani anymore. At the beginning of the year, I understood what they were trying to do. Hey, we want a Hands team to get out there late in games to help us secure these wins. I don't think you need that as much anymore because Walker's defense has taken a significant step. And also, Saggese provides, 1, more flexibility, and 2, provides a little bit of a right-handed thump off the bench that Ollie can then decide where he wants to use that. And when Ollie manages his best, it's when he's got options to come off the bench. And right now, he's basically playing with a 2-man bench at all times because he's not going to use Ciani to pinch hit. He's only there as a pinch runner or as a defensive replacement, and he's not going to burn the backup catcher as he shouldn't when it's Pozo or Pedro Pajes. So he's just got a 2-man bench. If you replace Ciani, put Saggese there, boom, now you've got 3 pieces that you can play with late in games.
And I would say if you're going to play that way, I don't know who Alec Burleson is hitting for. It would take a lot for me to get to him coming off of my bench, which is also why I think he would be the one that I would send down. I'm not worried about if Ciani sits on the bench for 5 straight games and never gets into a game. It changes nothing about the way that I evaluate him. I don't think you're necessarily stunting his growth. I think Michael Ciani is who he is right now as a player. With Burleson, I would hate if he ended up sitting on the bench for 5 straight days, basically in response to the fact that you've got other lefties that you trust more, And Thomas Saggese is somebody that I want to basically hit any kind of a pitcher that's on the mound, whether it's a righty or a lefty on any given day. I just trust Saggese to go out there right now. He's one of your best hitters currently. Luken Baker is a guy that we've seen a lot of from the text line. What about sending him back? He's in late game situations against a left-handed pitcher. So if you send him down, you once again are in the spot where you have one right-handed bat that you trust coming off of the bench, and it becomes Thomas Saggese. So I think that limits your flexibility as well.
Yeah. I on one hand, and I don't like saying it, I can't understand sending Thomas Saggese down. And mostly because they're trying to get answers on some of these guys. And I'm not talking about Luken Baker. I'm talking about, or Michael Ciani. I'm talking about Nolan Gorman. They want an answer on Nolan Gorman. And if Saggese's still up here, and I know they're different handedness, but Luken Baker seems to be their go-to guy in the pinch hit situations. And Nolan Gorman is going to be playing the second base or the DH spot when Alec Burleson isn't. I feel like the reasoning that they may have of sending Saggese down is look, we just need to get the at-bats as much as possible for Nolan Gorman. We know Saggese's going to be in a role at some point for this team later on this year or next season. But for right now, we need answers on Nolan Gorman. So on that front, I can understand where they're coming from because, frankly, that was my biggest thing about this season. Get the damn answers that you need for the players that you can end this season and say, we know what we've got, let's move on.
I think if they really want answers on Gorman, Burleson's the one that goes down because now the DH spot's open for him. Now Gorman can play every single day against right-handed pitching, and then this also allows for a role for Thomas Saggese as well, to where he can be a guy that has at-bats against lefties. Whether they want to go to Baker or Saggese in a spot there to pinch hit, they've got that option. Hey, game gets late and you've got Victor Scott coming up and it's late, you're losing, you kind of need to get a little bit desperate offensively. Scott's not been hitting left-handed pitching. Okay, so maybe then we go to a Saggese and we can push down into the outfield and we shift Newpart to center field. Where the focal point really becomes for them in this decision is, one, how much do we really want to get Gorman at bats? Because you can do that by sending Burleson down. It creates that spot. And two is, how much are you willing to do Newpart in center field? If you're willing to push Newpart into center field at times, then there's no need for Michael Ciani. But I think they really believe in having Ciani as this, whether it be for the hands team or serving as this backup center fielder. They're going to decide probably to keep him on the roster, and that will be what ultimately, in my opinion, leads to them sending down Saggese.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. If you keep Ciani too, the other thing is you could then pinch hit Saggese for Scott. That's part of this in a late game situation. You probably just platoon that DH spot between Gorman and Baker. You can just flip them in a late game spot, and then the same thing could be true for Scott. You put Saggese in as the pinch hitter, and then you bring Ciani into play center field, so you're not losing the defense by making that pinch hit decision. I think Burleson is the one that makes the most sense for them in terms of the way that it works, manipulating the roster on a day-to-day basis. In this scenario, you've got basically your 9-man everyday lineup is what we all know it to be, right? Newt, Contreras, Winn, Donovan, Arenado, Gorman, Walker, Paje, Scott. And then you end up with Saggese and Baker coming off of the bench, and those guys get starts in the event that you have a right or a left-handed pitcher on the mound that day. The other thing you can do is, as we've seen, guys are going to get off days. I think Masyn Winn is going to have off days built in now for the next few weeks. That would be my guess. It's how they handled it last year when he had his back issues. Makes all the sense in the world. Basically on Wednesdays or Fridays before or after that off day, buy him an extra 24 hours to be off. Hey, there you go. Thomas Saggese, this is your opportunity to go start. I think Burleson's the one that I would go with. Now let's go ahead and ask the question. What do you think they do?
Saggese.
I think so too.
I think it's Saggese. I don't think they want to give up on Burley. I think they're going to believe Burley can hit out of this.
Burley's one of the people, too, that they want to find out what they got. He was so great last year, but he kind of got quiet down the stretch. Let's see what he's got for a full season.
I agree, but that means that you're going to have somebody that ends up out of the lineup. It's funny, the thing that...
I think it's Gorman. Yeah, I think their actions from early on in the season chose to where they don't want to get Gorman at bats.
And the funny part, ironic part, I suppose, is that Gorman has actually been better in the regular season than Burleson has.
Yeah. And
Burleson was better in spring training, which earned him that opportunity. But then since we've been in the regular season, it's Gorman that's been outproducing Alec Burleson thus far. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we'll hit the BK and Ferrario rewind. But coming up next, NFL quick hitters here on BK and Ferrario.
Alex Ferrario back with you to tell you about Rhino Shield, and a shout out from Darren to RF Me and MC Mechanical Services, because their commercial property used Rhino Shield's work to fix the exterior of their business. It was old, tired steel building, needed a new look in Valley Park. They moved it, and the renovations now look brand new, and it's going to be super transformational for that company. And look, with your business, with your home, you don't want it to look old and worn down and tired. The paint chipping off, the water stains on the side, you want it to look brand new, and Rhino Shield can do that for you. No matter the surface you have, Rhino Shield ceramic coating sticks to it. Aluminum, block, wood, cedar, siding, stucco, asbestos, brick, all of it can work with Rhino Shield's work. It's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays, which, by the way, is going to save you some money on those energy bills. Call Darren today to get the quote on Rhino Shield's work. You get the coating of a Rhino for the exterior of your home or your business. 877-25-RHINO. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. 877-25RHINO.com.
Tanner Hendricks here. The Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues fell to the Jets last night as they trailed 2-0 in the best of 7 series. Game 3 on Thursday night. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 7:30 with Alex Ferrario. Puck drop at 8:30 with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale. The Sports Center is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
It's silly season. We're a couple of days away from the NFL draft with Alex and T-Bone on BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, I never know how to feel about these reports that come out the week of the draft. But Peter Schrager, who is now with ESPN, is reporting that the Cleveland Browns and New York Giants are fielding trade inquiries for their early picks. Now, the Browns pick number 2 overall. Prior to, the last 48 hours, felt pretty clear that the Browns were targeting Travis Hunter with that 2nd overall pick. The Giants are at number 3 overall. It has felt previously as though they are an Abdul Carter pick, the defensive end out of Penn State. And now that's been thrown into the air. We don't know. What do you make of this? Is this something where you believe these reports, or you think this is a bunch of hogwash?
I think it's hogwash. I think this is the type of, we haven't seen a whole lot of trade speculation, and so they're just gauging the waters to see, like, hey, if somebody wants to give us a Godfather offer, we'll move down. No, it took me a while to get there. I don't think any of these teams are moving out of it because, like you mentioned, the Browns won Hunter and the Giants won Abdul Carter, and unless somebody is really desperate to go get a quarterback, that's when they'd consider it.
Can I make the case that the Browns should trade down?
But if you want Hunter, I don't know how far you could go down.
I don't think they should want
Hunter.
Don't think an impact receiver with Joe Flacco as your quarterback doesn't help?
Very fair.
I think Travis Hunter has a chance to be a great player in the NFL. Something that we've really never seen before in the NFL. What's that doing for Cleveland? Even if he becomes a B-plus wide receiver and a B-plus corner. It's an A-plus player overall because he gives you value on both sides of the ball. Okay, Cleveland still doesn't have a quarterback. They've got a bunch of other issues on their roster. If I'm them, I would be capitalizing on the value that could hold to another one of these teams. Like, imagine San Francisco with Travis Hunter on their roster. That changes some things for them. Imagine Dallas with Travis Hunter on their
Patriots.
roster. Yeah, like there are other teams that you can trade down, accumulate a bunch of different picks, and that team, the Patriots are a great point on that with Mike Vrabel as
I always thought that there was a team that wanted Hunter.
That's what I'd be doing if I was Cleveland. In fact, if they could move down to 4 with New England and then move down again with San Francisco, Chicago, whomever, I would be doing that if I was them. Accumulate as many picks as humanly possible. You are in a terrible situation right now. You have no way out of this Deshaun Watson contract. You're not going to be good over the next couple of seasons. Go ahead and give yourselves more outs here. Maybe take a quarterback when you move back later. Maybe you end up being the team that takes Shedeur Sanders. Or maybe you move into the teens or the 20s and you end up being able to select Jackson Dart. Sure, give yourself a chance. I don't think he's going to be good. Maybe you do. Worst case scenario, you move down, you accumulated a bunch of other picks, and you gave yourself a chance to get that quarterback. I wouldn't be taking Travis Hunter at 2 if I'm them. And that's no shot against Travis Hunter. It's a state about where the Browns are as an organization. I don't think he changes anything for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the problem, though, is where they find themselves is stuck between a rock and a hard place because I don't think there's enough value in Travis Hunter to trade up to 2 to go acquire him. Like, to me, you're giving up too much in draft capital to go draft a, like you said, a wide receiver. At number 2 overall, that feels like a stretch. I think if you're Cleveland, I think you're just kind of stuck. I would take the defensive end Carter from Penn State. I think he will carry more value long-term that high in the draft than you'll see from Hunter. Because, I mean, look at what we've seen when some of the best defensive ends go this high in the draft. Typically, they stay in the league for a long time. And if you've got Myles Garrett, who, by the way, was one of these picks, Myles Garrett, Carter coming off the edge, okay, now you have at least an identity you can build around as the Browns.
Yeah, I think it makes some sense. But again, okay, now you have 2 great defensive ends. I've got a lot of other problems if I'm the Cleveland Browns. I don't know that solves enough for them. And the Giants don't have a quarterback either. I think these teams that are picking 2 and 3 right now, there are no obvious quarterbacks picks for them. Teams appear to be pretty low right now on Shedeur Sanders relative to what we thought maybe coming into the draft. I would trade down if I'm either of them. If Travis Hunter is there at 2 and somebody wants to come up for him, cool. I'm moving back. If I'm 3, the Giants, and let's say Travis Hunter does go 2, I'm trading down, somebody else come up and get Abdul Carter. I don't want to pick in the top 3 this year if I'm not getting that number 1 overall pick where Cam Ward is pretty clearly coming off of the board. So I don't know how much this is actually going to happen, but I think it makes a lot of sense when you think about it critically going into this year's draft. If I'm Cleveland or the New York Giants, I am desperately trying to move down in this year's draft. Alex, is there anything else going into Thursday that you have your eye on, that you're like, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to be monitoring, number 1 top of my board going into the first round of the draft?
I mean, Travis Hunter is my number 1 thing, because I do think teams like the Patriots, the Cowboys should be aggressive to try and get Travis Hunter. The other one is Shador. I'm curious what team decides to take a chance on him and how it pans out, because I've heard everything from he can be a franchise quarterback to dude is going to be a bust in the first year. What team rolls the dice and says we need a quarterback desperately?
The thing I'm keeping an eye on is how many quarterbacks are going in the first round. Because, I mean, we mentioned Shador. We've talked about Cam Ward. Looks like he's locked to go number 1. To me, that's the only 2 first-round quarterbacks. But today I saw a report, like some people are saying, oh, maybe there's 3. There might even be 4 that go in the first round. I think that's silly season. I don't think Dart's a first-round quarterback. I don't think the Louisville kid, Shove, or whatever his name is, I don't think he's a first-round quarterback. I think there's just 2. And I think that's where it's going to make for some interesting TV as this goes along. Because if the Giants aren't going quarterback at 3, Patriots aren't, Jacksonville's not, I don't think Vegas will. Is 7 where Shador goes with the New York Jets? Or are we going to see somebody that makes a desperate move to really move up the leaderboard, keeping an eye on the Pittsburgh Steelers, as that team that makes that move?
To me, it's about the non-premium positions that could go early in this year's draft. How many tight ends go in the top 15? There's 2 of them that potentially could. Do we see both of them go off the board? Typically, that's been a bad pick for teams. This is a weird draft, though. Is this the year that we see them get pushed up a little bit? There's a linebacker, Jahad Campbell, who is a really good player, but he's an off-ball linebacker, and he's been hurt in the pre-draft process. Does he end up going in the top 15 overall selections? There's a safety in Malachi Starks from Georgia, who is a really excellent player, did not run all that way, well, not super athletic, and he plays safety, which is not a premium position in the NFL right now. Does he end up going through the Kyle Hamilton process, where he dropped further than most people expected and gets picked on a great team and ends up in a really good situation? Or does he go higher than people expect? It's those non-premium positions to me that are going to be the storyline of the top 15 overall selections or so. A lot of positions that are not traditionally taken in the top 15 that could be this year. A running back as well. A couple of them.
Yeah.
Marion Hampton is one, and the other
Genty.
is
Ashton Genty.
Yeah, Ashton Genty as well. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like in the first round of this year's draft. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN.
Let me read you a positive testimony, a review up on Classic Air Care's Google Plus page. This one coming from Diane. Eric was out within hours of us calling that our AC unit went out. We are new to the area, called after a recommendation from our neighbor. Eric answered every question we had, felt he was very honest. We will be asking for Eric, and we purchased the new HVAC system thanks to him and the team over at Classic Air Care. So whether you're in the market for a new HVAC system or you're trying to squeeze the life out of your old HVAC system as much as possible, you've got to use the company that's going to be upfront, honest, and have incredible customer service, and that's Classic Air Care. I've been using them since 2016 when it comes to my older unit in terms of maintenance that we have, a part of their maintenance agreement, and when we needed to purchase a new one after it hit the, it officially went kaput, that's where Classic Air Care come into play with their financing options. So if you're in the market, give them a call today. You can actually do an estimate if you're purchasing a new HVAC system. They have a deal in April to where if you buy an HVAC system, you get the furnace for free. So call them today. Schedule your appointment online. Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you can go to find it. It's all presented and sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. Appreciate them for doing so. YouTube chat is always available for you at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL, and the studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. To finish things off today, we'll hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind, looking back to last night's game between the Blues and the Jets. A 2-1 loss on the road. They are now down 2-0 in this series. Alex, your biggest takeaway from that loss and then being down 2-0 in the series is what?
The Blues are lacking offense at even strength, and a lot of this is with the injuries to Dylan Holloway and not being 100% with Robert Thomas and Colton Parayko. I don't believe Winnipeg has been the clear-cut better team for the entirety of the series. I think they have had periods that they have just dominated the Blues, and the third being both of them, but I also feel like this team right now is searching for answers that I'm not sure if they can find when it comes to offense on the even strength side.
That's where I'm at as well. I think the Blues have won each of the first periods. I think that Winnipeg has won the third periods thus far. And really, it's been a matter of how do the second periods go for you and how much do you win in those respective periods. The Winnipeg's just destroyed the Blues in the third thus far. I think the Blues have been a little lesser than in the second period than Winnipeg personally, but ultimately that really determines how you feel about the series thus far. At 5-on-5, 20-7 is the high danger chances in favor of Winnipeg. You mentioned it going into the series, Alex. This is going to be a series that's determined by who wins the front of the net. That is what the Winnipeg Jets have been good at all season long. It's what the Blues have been good at during their winning streak. They have lost that area so far in this series. That can change. We'll see what happens when the series comes back here to St. Louis on Thursday. But early on in this thing, it has been highly in favor of Winnipeg. The Cardinals also lose last night. They do so in dramatic fashion because this is what they do. They go into the 8th inning. They're feeling good about it. They have, hopefully, Maton in the 8th. Helsley in the 9th, close that bad boy out. Boom, feeling good going into game number 2. That is not the way that it went. Maton imploded. The Cardinals once again have a bullpen blow it for them. T-Bone, what was your takeaway from last night's game against Atlanta?
Well, Ollie, I thought scripted it perfectly, right? You get to your 3 biggest arms. One of them has an off night, and then you have to go to the underbelly of the pin, and the underbelly of the pin is the one that ends up giving up the dagger shot. Look, JoJo was brought into a tough situation. Bases loaded, 1 out. You can't allow 4 runs to score, though, when you're brought into the game. It's the underbelly of their pen. Their bullpen is their biggest issue. They are not as bad as their record shows, but their bullpen is really dragging them down right now.
Yeah, it's been a problem for them. I wonder if we'll see anything that is a little bit of a makeover for the bullpen today. I have not seen the lineup come out, which typically means that there's going to be a roster move coming. I would anticipate that is Masyn Winn. We'll see what that means for Thomas Ajacey, Alec Burleson, what they decide to do there. We will react to that tomorrow here on the show. We will also talk to the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. So be sure to stay tuned for that. It's tomorrow at 11 a.m. here on BK and Ferrario. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.